Welcome to the Coda Podcast. I'm Rue from Rue Films, and today I'll be speaking with Becky from Thompson Wedding Films. Recent winner of South West Wedding Videographer of the Year at the Wedding Industry Awards, Becky creates vibrant films full of life that focus in on the true emotions of a wedding day, continuously contrasting sentimental moments with elements of humour and fun. In this chat, we take a deep dive into her deliverables, which includes a long-form video that can be best described as a feature film and doc edit hybrid. Becky elevates the emotional impact of these films by including long takes with clever use of ambient sound, ensuring nothing of value to the couple is left on the cutting room floor. Becky, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Hiya, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to see you virtually.
The last time we met up was January for the TWIA Nationals, wasn't it? Because you won South West, didn't you, in October?
I did, yes. It was very exciting. Seems like ages ago now.
It really does, doesn't it? And all the finalists, we arranged to meet up, didn't we, just before the finals to get together. And it was that which kind of inspired Coda, to be honest, that day that we spent together and the kind of camaraderie we all had together.
It's just nice to put proper faces to names. You know everybody's kind of business name, and then you go, oh, you're the face behind it.
Absolutely, especially the finalists as well, because when you're in the nationals, you can't help but stalk the other people in the category with you.
Of course you do, yeah.
So to finally get to see those people, but So
no, it was really good.
Since winning your regional in TWIA, has it changed your business much? Have you seen any kind of changes at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think the immediate thing was all the people that were booked in with me for this year were sort of excited. They're, oh, we've got an award-winning videographer, and all my pre-wedding calls, they sort of mentioned that they've seen it, and obviously past clients as well. They were really excited because they'd voted and like they were happy that I'd won. But yeah, it does get mentioned. I don't know if I've seen a massive influx in inquiries, but I think it's maybe sealed the deal for people sometimes because they've mentioned it when they've been chatting. So yeah, but and also it's just kind of that kind of credibility within the industry. It gives you a bit of a confidence boost as well. So
absolutely,
it's definitely worth doing. Yeah, and it was fun.
Are you entering again this year?
Yep. Yeah, and it's making me do some bits, like looking at my website. I've gone, oh, I haven't put any 2024 weddings on my website. I should do that.
Yeah.
If anything, it's just an excuse to make sure that you're on top of things.
It does. It keeps you accountable, doesn't it, throughout the year? Because it's because the fact that the deadline is in October, I think, isn't it? Which is like a real. I don't know if it's the same for you, but that for me is my busiest time, October, because I've come to the end of shooting, but I've got my longest backlog of weddings to edit through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the tendency at that point in the year would be to kind of just crack on with the edits, but when it's forcing you to do business side of things and keep your portfolio update, it's quite helpful, isn't it?
Well, because it's also the time that people actually make inquiries. So while you're sort of going, I just need to be in the office editing, you also need to be, everyone's kind of putting inquiries in at the same time. So it's good to have stuff updated.
Absolutely. But yeah, sorry, I'll just go into a random tangent on TWIA there.
It's good. So are you judging this year? Was that?
Yes, mate. Yes.
How exciting.
Yes. And I will take bribes in the form of chocolate hobnobs for any of our listeners.
Yeah, any tips? That'll be exciting, though. That's a new thing to do.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I don't know if I could deal with the pressure of it.
Oh, man, I'm
deciding.
I'm really into it because I just really like watching wedding films anyway. So
yeah,
I'm going to get a spreadsheet out. I'm going to be very thorough. But yes,
amazing.
But let's get into you, Becky, and your business. So let's to start off with, how many weddings do you shoot on average each year?
So I'm doing about 20 now. So I'm not loads. When I first started, I did up to 40, and I just can't do that. I think having children makes a difference.
Yeah.
It's just my daughter takes up so much time. So yeah, about 20 is good for me.
Can we go into your packages a little bit?
Yep.
What do you offer in your package? What are the different packages that you offer, and how much does each one cost?
So I really only offer one because I'm not doing hordes and hordes of weddings. I want all those 20 weddings to be full days. So unless it's kind of in the middle of winter, and then maybe they don't want bridal prep or something like that, I'll do something a bit shorter, or if they just wanted a highlights video. But I've done it before in different packages, and when they just want highlights, I just find it really hard, because I think I've got all this other stuff that I could give you, and I just feel so sad that you haven't got it. And I know that you can just upsell that, but then, you know, if they've gone for highlights, they may just go for that, and then have to get rid of it. It's just really sad. But yeah, so I just tend to do it full day, and I don't put any kind of hourly time limits on it, which is often stresses the photographer out, I think, because they're like, well, I'm booked until 9 p.m. and they've got fireworks at 10, so they're going to have to pay extra. And I'm like, well, I'm easy breezy. I'll do whatever you want. I mean, obviously, I don't really want to be there till the last song, but it gives me that flexibility that I can kind of just judge it how it is. Because if it's an amazing party, and also if I think, oh, this will look great for my portfolio, these guys are amazing, I'll just stay. Yeah. And then a couple always really appreciate that. They always notice it. So I just think, leave it up to me, see how I feel it's going. And then also on the flip side of that as well, if it's that wedding that you just know will never kick off, it's going to always be dead. But if you've been booked in till a certain time and you're just stood around waiting, I sort of say, oh, I've got enough now, so I'll go, rather than being stuck to a time.
It's exactly how I work it as well. And very recently, I've had that situation with photographers. They're going, so what time are you going then? What time? And they clearly want to go. And I'm like, well, I haven't got what I need yet. I'm just going to hang around. Yeah. And I think that they worry that it makes them look bad because they've got like a time limit. But the thing with video is, it's in our interest to stay that bit longer, because a photographer can just take a couple of pictures of people on the dance floor and that's fine, right? They don't need full coverage, but we can't. Yeah, of course. We've got a whole chapter of our film that's incomplete unless we hang around to get it, haven't we? So it makes it easier for us if we stay later, because we get more footage and it's easier in the edit, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. It's always the groom. I can never pin him down on the dance floor. Yeah. I get loads of the bride, and then I think I need something else of the two of you that's not just the first dance, like when it's got a bit darker. And I'm sort of staring at him like, come on, get up. I just need a little bit more of you. But yeah, so that's my kind of full day. So it's 2,500 is what I charge, pretty much for anywhere. If it's miles and miles away, then put a bit of travel on it. And then they get a highlights film from that, and then a full film, so mine's a bit different, I think, than a lot of videographers. Rather than separating the speeches out into a separate film and the ceremony out into a separate film, they kind of get the whole day from start to finish. So I kind of do bridal prep, then ceremony, then drinks reception, speeches, and the evening all into one long film. And
that's similar to what some people kind of deliver as a doc edit or name as a doc edit. But yeah, like I said, I've seen your version of that, and it's a little bit more polished. So it'd be interesting for us to dive into that shortly. But I've got a few more quick questions I want to throw at you. So what cameras are you using now?
So I'm on Panasonic, on the Lumix, the S5 Mark II, a few of those. I really controversially started out on Nikon.
No way.
And I can't remember what year it was, but it was recent, in the last few years that I switched over. I really resisted it for a long time. Nikon only because that's the camera that I had like for a hobby. Yeah. So, and obviously when you start building up with one, you kind of don't want to change because you got a lot of kit. I actually really liked the Nikon, but there was a lot of, the colours were a bit weird, and I knew I needed to change eventually. But instead of going Sony, I then obviously went Panasonic, because I couldn't possibly go with the same as what everyone else has got.
What was it that sold it for you for Panasonic? What was the key ingredients that you were looking for?
Possibly Russell.
Oh, was it?
Technicals, yeah, I think
RKN,
so. I think it's when he was when he was doing a lot of promo for that. But I really wanted to move because the stabilization wasn't great on the Nikon, and when I first started out, I shot a lot with zooms. I'm kind of the opposite of everybody else, because a lot of people are kind of going towards getting a zoom now rather than being on primes, whereas I started on zooms and moved to primes. I used to use a monopod and kind of just stand back all the time the Nikon had a 70 to 200 2.8 that was really nice. So I used to use that all the time. It'd be great to get loads of shots of people from far away. But I worked with a photographer. I can't remember the photographer, but he'd done a wedding with Philip White. And he was like, oh, this guy was amazing. He literally just walked around with his camera. He didn't have anything else. Did it all handheld. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. It'd be great if I could kind of crouch down at any point and I don't have to put my monopod down really short. Like it takes forever to get down. And I'd be really more flexible. And like in the dancing, the evening, I could get into the crowd a lot more and not be kind of attached to this monopod. So I bought a prime for the Nikon and had a little play around with it, and it was really good, and it did give me that flexibility. So I wanted to use that more. So I wanted to use a camera that had better stabilization, and the Panasonic is really good for that.
What was the first prime that you got that you used on a Nikon? Was it a 50?
Yeah, it was a 50. Yeah, nice. Of course.
Classic, isn't it? What
Classic, yeah.
Incredible focal length. And is that still? Do you still use a 50 now, or what's the lens setup that you're using?
Yeah, well, I've got a 30. I use mostly 35, 50, and an 85. But the Panasonic is cropped at 50 frames. Yeah. So I'm tending to use the 35 a lot because it kind of gives you about a 50 sort of focal length when you're on 50 frames. So are you shooting 50 frames for majority of your B-roll, or? Yeah, ceremony and speeches are 25. To be honest, I don't really need it because I don't do an awful lot of slow-mo, but I think it's just that safety. Yeah. The fear, especially for things like walking down the aisle if you don't quite get enough of it and want to slow it down a little bit, and confetti and things. 50 has saved me so many times. Yeah. But I don't need it for the rest of the day. I don't know what it is. I think it gives me that safety. I sometimes occasionally slow stuff down in the evening for dancing shots if it suits the music. So again, it's handy to have, but I don't need it. Maybe I'll change that. Because I've noticed even in your couple shoots, you're not necessarily using slow-mo, are you? You're just showing it in real time. Yeah, I mean, I used to do it a lot in slow-mo. I think because I had watched a lot of wedding films and that was kind of the done thing. But I don't know, it's as I've got older that I'm kind of moving away from, I sort of feel it can be a bit cheesy sometimes. That kind of slow-mo and with the speeches. I mean, it's beautiful, and if it's done right, it looks amazing. But it can be, for some of my couples who don't want to be over the top emotional, it's nice to show it in real time rather than just slow it down all the time. Yeah, because there's certain couples that are not going to want to, me and my wife included, we're not going to want to see ourselves kissing in slow motion. It's just not our vibe at all. And some people kiss weird, and you won't know it until you see it. And you've asked for a kiss, and they've gone in for like full-on tongues, and you think, no, that's not what I wanted. And it's not what you wanted. I promise you won't want to see it. And when they kiss with their eyes open as well, I have to say something. Side eye to you because they're checking that. I have to stop them. Like, no, don't kiss like a psychopath, please. Either don't kiss at all or close your eyes. It's such a shame when it's on the first kiss as well. Like they've obviously practiced the first kiss and they think they've got it perfectly. And you just think, oh no, what did you do? Stop the wedding. Excuse me. Yeah, no, do it again. Let's get a redo. That wasn't right. I really liked real time there. And also I used to do a lot of walking shots all the time. And a lot of my shots now are just the couple together. And I kind of say to them, just do your thing and just be together and chat. Which some people can't do at all. They kind of go, what? I need a bit of... But if it's the right couple, they will. And obviously in real time, that's now nice because it's just a moment in time, really. Are you quite hands-on when it comes to portraits with the couples, or do you kind of... I think videographers we fall into a couple of categories. It's either like hide from the bushes while the photographer does their thing, shoot over the shoulder and stuff, or the ones where we do get involved a little bit. I think I'm a bit of a hybrid from being a photographer originally. Like I do like to get involved where possible, but I read the room. What's your process? Yeah, no, I'm definitely in the bushes. Are you? Yeah. I mean, it depends on who the photographer is. I'm lucky that I've got quite a few photographers I work with quite regularly because I've got jobs from them recommending me. And so that's always great because you know how they work, you know what their style is, and you can basically just let them do their thing and I know I'm going to get what I need. But if it's a very different style, which is weird. I find that weird when couples book that. When you kind of look at the photographer's work and their style of working and you think, that's very different to me. It's strange that you would have picked two completely different things. But yeah, if they're very posy, then I will need to get them to do something a little bit because it will look really staged in a film. So, but again, it won't be much. It'll just be kind of go over there in that nice spot and just have a little moment together. And if they then do nothing, then I might say, oh, put your foreheads together, have a little kiss, say something to make her laugh.
Yeah. Just the classes that you got. Yeah, you have to just base it on the couple themselves, don't they? But I feel with your work, your couples always seem quite fun-loving and kind of feel natural together, but they're not. It's not overly romantic, but at the same time, it's loving. If that makes sense, and it's just it interests me in how you're getting that from your couples. But it is a case of just letting them do their thing, and you're shooting from far away.
Yeah, I think maybe I've been lucky with the couples that I get, and I don't know whether they are attracted to seeing that in my films and if they're that kind of couple. And then also a little bit of chatting to them before in the pre-wedding call and just saying, like I do kind of lay it on thick. I'm not going to give you loads of direction. I think it will look really cheesy. So just try and be yourselves. And a lot of the things that end up in the highlights is the parts that are later on in the day, because they tend to be more relaxed. Yeah. I like that a lot better than when it's earlier on. A lot of the stuff, like, when the photographer does their little first set of photos, a lot of that stuff from me just doesn't make it in the edit because
straight in the bin.
Yeah, they're not relaxed enough. And then I can then have a conversation with them before the second time around and just kind of not tell them that they were rubbish, but basically be like, that wasn't good enough. We need to relax and take a breather, and you can sort of learn from that first set. It's nice when you get an opportunity. Not that you always get an opportunity to do it later in the day, but it is good if you can squeeze in a little bit, just to give them a second go around. And then they tend to like not bring the bouquet, and he can take his jacket off, and it just feels a lot more relaxed.
Yeah, definitely. And but then you get to that time in a year when you don't get chance for that second set.
I know, that's awful, isn't it? I haven't got any weddings after October this year, and I'm like, yes, it's really good.
Is that by design, or is that just how it's fallen?
No, it's just how it's fallen. It is usually, I'm sure like everybody, a lot quieter after that time. But yeah, I haven't got any Christmas weddings this year, so it's all good. Can try and get it all edited before Christmas.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Are you likely to have your backlog cleared before Christmas? Is that doable?
No, probably not. Maybe there'll be a few left over, but hopefully the majority of it will be good.
Yeah, nice. Going back to your cameras, what are your B and C cams? Obviously, I'm assuming a Panasonic as well. What versions are they? What cameras are they?
They are, well, you say they. I only use two.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I keep saying I need to add a third in. But I like to be as, this sounds like what everyone says, but as non-intrusive as possible.
Yeah.
And I often will be filming speeches and thinking, it'd be brilliant to have a third, like wide at the back. But then also, I just feel any tripods anywhere just stress me out. Yeah. I feel like even two, I kind of think, I want to get them as far out into the guests as possible so that they don't feel like there's tripods everywhere. And so, yeah, I definitely think every time I come home from a wedding, I say to my husband, I need a third camera. I've got to have it, especially when you've got a bigger wedding and there is more room to put them out. But I think that's been the reason that stopped me from doing it, is I always just want to feel like I'm blending in as much as possible. So I'm currently only using two.
Nice. So what's the lens setups then that you're going for your multicams then?
So it depends on the space. But I tend to have kind of an 85. So if we're doing speeches, so an 85 on the speaker, from kind of a 45-degree angle if they've got a long top table.
Yeah.
So depending on what the space is like, you might get a bit of the other guests on the top table in that as well. But it's basically, its main focus is to get a nice shot of the speaker. And then the other one, maybe a 35 or a 50, depending on what the setup is, to get kind of the other side of the speaker, but more of the top table.
Yes.
So say it's dad, might get in like dad and the bride and groom, and whoever's sat next to them. So a little bit of a further out, a wider shot. But yeah, it depends on what the combo is. But for ceremony, I tend to try and get a down the aisle shot something wide, maybe a 35 or 50, depending on how long the aisle is. And then my 85 tends to be on the bride. So I quite like shooting from the back. It can be kind of over the top of the guests' heads, which obviously is then an issue if they stand for the vows. So I kind of tend to be then running around into the aisle for that bit. But I've got my aisle camera there set up, so it kind of covers that bit.
So you're shooting majority of your ceremonies from the back with both your cameras?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the venues that I've been to recently, but quite often, if I can film it at the back, I will.
Yeah.
And then try and get more of a face-on view of the bride. If you can kind of get down the side of the guests, or even just being in the back corner, it kind of still gives you that little bit more angled on her face view.
Right, so you'd be at the back off to the kind of right-hand corner, shooting over the top of guests' heads towards, so you're getting the face, more of the face of the bride towards you as much as possible.
Yeah, if there's the space for me to do it, halfway through the ceremony, I'll sort of switch it around, so I get the groom side. So I'll get maybe her doing her vows and get him doing the rings.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And I always have a conversation with them and say, when they ask you to face each other, really face each other, because some people don't, and some people are sort of still facing the registrar rather than facing each other, and so you don't quite get that profile view from the back of the aisle.
Yeah.
Whereas if I say make sure you fully face each other, then you get a good view of both of them. I have really been trying to get the reaction of the groom. I say groom, I mean it's obviously not always a groom, but whoever stood at the end of the aisle. So my camera that is at the end of the aisle normally, obviously it can't be there when she's coming down.
Yeah.
So I tend to have it like really low, tucked into behind the guest seats.
Yes.
So it could, and on an 85, like cropped right in. It doesn't always work, because if he moves at the last minute and he's not quite in shot, then it won't get it. But I think, well, if he gets it, it gets it. If it doesn't, then never mind, we missed it.
So during the coming down the aisle, would you be at the front?
Yeah.
Capturing a bride, yeah. Mm-hmm. And would that be on your 50?
35. I tend to want to try and get... I'll get the whole walk down the aisle, but the bit where she's kind of closest is the bit that I want.
Yeah.
So I want to be as wide as possible and almost getting him in shot if I can.
Yes.
If I can have him kind of hit off to the side, out of focus, then that's a nice shot to get.
So you've got that on your 35 from the front. Mm-hmm. Bride comes down. You then move yourself to the back, and your 85, which was on the groom initially, does that then become your A cam in a way, the one that you're working with, and the 35 is the one you leave in the aisle?
Yeah. So I'll sort of leave that little one that was down the bottom running just to cover the first bit of the ceremony, which I'm not too bothered and sometimes get cut out if the angle hadn't worked and they're sort of off to the side or something. It's usually just the registrar introducing themselves, or if it's a church, they tend to go straight into a hymn. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter that bit. But yeah, so while I'm setting up the B cam into the aisle, I can leave that one on, and then once that's all set up, I can move that and use that as my A cam.
Yeah, and are both 50 frames at this point?
They're on 25 now.
25. Oh, so you literally have to change it over.
But the one that was down the bottom is 25 always.
Right, of course.
From his reaction, but I just put 50 on for the bride coming down the aisle, just for the safety.
Yeah. So that 35 becomes like a 50 as she's walking down the aisle with the crop factor. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
My God, these Panasonics,
I know they're annoying, aren't they?
But the one thing we're going to talk about when they're shooting is your work is insanely stable, like phenomenally stable, and that's because that's obviously your skill as well. Because I've seen Panasonic footage be mad shaky, but Panasonic has got incredible stabilization, hasn't it? And
it's really.
I'm sure I'm assuming you're utilizing that, unless you're the steadiest person in the whole universe.
No, I've got all of it all turned on as high as it can go.
Yeah. And is there what's it called? What's like the extreme version you have on there? Is it like tripod mode?
I think it's called Boost. But yeah, I just have it all on. You're supposed to turn that off for any kind of moving shots, which I don't do much of, but I'll turn it off for kind of doing confetti if I'm tracking down. Yeah. But that's about it for most of the day.
Is there any downsides to using that IS, that stabilization?
Not really. It is really, if you're trying to do movement, it'll kind of almost warp it a little bit.
Right.
If you move too much. So you need to kind of make sure. But I have there's a button like on the front of the camera. I have that set up to flick to have it on and off. So I can just easily turn it on and off. So I don't have to go into the menu or anything. So
are you handheld majority of the day then, apart from obviously speeches and ceremony?
Yeah, literally the rest of the day. It's all handheld.
And when you're during the ceremony, are you using tripods or are you using a monopod and a tripod for the?
Yeah, both tripods. But I used to have a monopod for that A cam for moving around more, but it just gets annoying. And it's good for in a marquee because I used to use them for speeches as well, a monopod. But in a marquee, anyone moves.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, even tripods, but tripods are better.
So I want to go back to your speeches, actually. I totally understand your layout. So we've got the top table and you've got two cameras on opposite sides shooting 45 degrees towards the speaker. Are you shifting the roles of those cameras based on where the speaker turns?
Yeah, so not like during their speech. So say it's the groom speaking and he turns to speak about his parents.
Yeah.
I won't switch them because it's obviously only a small part of the speeches. But if you then get the best men that are the other end of the table and they're looking a different way, then I'll swap the roles of them.
So you're not actually going and changing cameras around. You're literally just...
Yeah. So it then means that you get a different focal length. That's the only thing with it. Because if they're at the other end of the table, they then have the shorter focal length on them. But what I'll kind of do is when I'm setting it up, I'm thinking primarily for the groom because I want him to have the best one.
Yeah.
And then everyone else just gets whatever's closest to them, basically.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So like you plan it out in your head based on how they're going to be positioned on the order of the speeches and Yeah, I want him to have the best shot. And then I will move them if it's not. I'm happy to move the tripods if it's not suiting it. It can be really difficult if somebody stood right on the end of the table, and that's where I'm kind of close to set at a 45 degree. So then it might even mean I have to move that tripod completely to the other side of the room. So I'm sort of running around with the tripod, which I tend to do like when they've all got up to say cheers, and I kind of go, you
got to run off now.
I did the exact same thing on Saturday's wedding. I was doing the same setup as you. I had an 85 and a 55, but I always wanted my 85 to be the reaction cam. So I was getting up and swapping them around.
Swapping them over.
Oh my God. And running with a tripod is the hardest thing in the world. Like you're tripping yourself over, you're banging into chairs.
Yeah, it's not ideal. But yeah, I mean, I say these setups, but quite often I will change it. If once it gets to the best man shot, because you kind of want both the bride and groom's reaction.
Yeah.
I might just have an 85 on them sat at the table and it won't have the speaker in it. And then the other cam will be straight on the speaker, which again then stresses me out, and I need the third camera because there's only one on him on the speaker. But I sort of think, well, let's hope for the best.
Is there? Because I always think I could definitely do a wedding. There's quite often I'm putting my multi-cameras together and I think, I haven't even used my third angle at all during these speeches or ceremony. How often is there a moment where you think, I really wish I had another one, or is it generally you're pretty sound with a two's fine?
More recently, because I used to shoot, one of the cameras would be just to have the speaker in a really nice shot, and then the other one I would use for a wide shot, more of a safety. And then like you're probably doing with your third camera, I would hate having to cut back to it because it never looked as nice as that 85 shot. So now I sort of want them to both be, they're both like shooting really wide open. They both look as nice as each other. They're just different focal lengths. So I sort of worry that when I put that third cam in, is it going to look as nice? Is it going to look like it is a safety cam?
It's another camera to worry about, another camera to think about.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's all the gear, isn't it? There's another tripod for that as well.
Yeah. Because it's hard enough for me to be able to figure that the focal length change was swapping from 25 to 50 on one camera.
But I think once I'd got into the mindset of it, my view of what a 35 looks like in my head is basically it cropped in.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I'm not kind of going, what will the 35 look like cropped in? I'm already imagining it cropped in, because for most of the day that's how I'm working with it, apart from in the speeches and the ceremony. So although it sounds confusing, I'm sure from the way that you're normally working, for me it isn't, because that's just what I use all the time.
Yeah, your brain is just configured to it now. Yeah, it's not one of those things when do you shoot log?
No,
I've only recently started shooting log, and initially because you have to be at certain ISOs, and otherwise you bring in mad noise to it. So
this is what scares me.
Yeah, and that's what scared me, and that's why I didn't do it. But it's so quick that your brain adjusts to that and just knows, and that's what surprised me, because you feel like you get to a point in your career, think my knowledge is my knowledge, and it's hard to add any new things in. I don't want to change the what. But it's funny how you can add a new element to your work and it just becomes second nature like that. But the occasional cock up here and there and super noisy footage, but it is what it is.
It's fine.
Yeah. So as we're talking about multicams, what is your audio setup? What are you using to capture your audio in the day?
I'm just using the Sonys and
the TX650s.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly 660s now, just from replacing them. Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay. Why is that? What happened?
Not from the reason of that everyone's been talking about, of them cutting out. I did have one cut out, and I think it is due to not formatting it properly, the 650s. But mainly because I just damaged all the clips. Yeah. All the clips got scratched up, and I just hated it. I want them to look perfect.
Yeah.
And so I bought the 660s, and I was so careful that every time I take one off them, I'm putting it back in its little case. And there's still a couple of scratches on the newest ones, and it just really annoys me. I keep thinking, what can I do? I've tried things to cover it up, but
you've tried. You even keep putting them back in their little leather sheaths.
Yeah, I do. I've got them all collected, and it's that really stressful moment, because I usually take them off when they're signing the register or at some point during that time, and all you want to do is just shove them in your bag. But I like get my the little pouch, put them all in. But I have tucked them away sometimes. I bought some little. They're kind of like card wallet cases. I think you're supposed to put like credit cards in them, and they go inside the top pocket, and so you can put a Sony inside there, so it's not on show at all. And
the pocket square inserts.
The pocket square thing. That's what it's for. And the sound is just as good as if it was on the outside, but because they're a bit thick, it sort of looks like he's got something stuffed in his pocket. So it depends on what the buttonhole is like. If it's quite a big buttonhole, then it doesn't show. So it's fine. I've taped them in as well.
Oh, have you? You've taped it inside the pocket?
Yeah.
Just so that because you don't want the clip on show, basically.
Because I don't want the clip on show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love this chat, because this is like, I think I bring this up with every single guest, because I
know
always
you think they look like a vape.
I look like a vape, and so I'm always interested in what people are doing. So what you mentioned before, just to kind of describe it to listeners, you've got like a pocket square insert that goes into their pocket on their chest. Yeah.
It's like the whole size of the pocket.
Yes. Yeah.
That sort of size.
And they're supposed to be used to put like the handkerchief in it, and they can keep things in it on it. It's got a completely different use, but the TX650 can clip onto that, and it keeps it raised up, so the microphone section is close to the top of the pocket. Yeah. Without it sinking in, but it's hidden, right? That's what you're doing. Yeah. Cool. And so you're saying when you use that, the sound is as good as when it's clipped to the outside. Yeah. Do you get any rustling?
I think there's less rustling, because it's kind of protected. Yeah. And because it sort of forces the pocket forward a little bit, there's no rubbing on it. It's completely protected from there.
They're well worth having, aren't they? Because especially if you get a groom that doesn't want it on show.
Or if they've got a really light coloured suit and it's naff. Yeah. It's great if they wear a tux, because it just blends right in. But if it's just a beige suit, it's no good.
Oh, yeah, brutal. And you say you tape them in as well. So what are you using to tape it, and what's your method?
What's the tape that you can like tape labs underneath clothes.
Like the Ursa stickies?
Yes, those kind of. They also do long strips as well.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
So I think it's the same company. So you can kind of and they're double-sided. So I put some onto the inside of his pocket, stick it to it, and then stick another one on top just to make sure that it doesn't fall through. Which I discovered when I had a groom who was being laved up for the sound system. And so I plugged into that. But I wanted to have a Sony there just as a backup as well. But he had a pink suit and he absolutely didn't want anything on show. He didn't want another lav, which is fair enough. 2 lavs would look absolutely ridiculous. So it's like, what are we going to do? I can't bear the thought of just having something plugged into the system as my only sound. So I put another one in and it was fine. And actually that I used kind of a combo of the 2 sounds because it wasn't perfect from the sound system. So
never is it? Never is.
No.
The stress I've put myself plugging from the desk, and I don't think I've ever had a full-on 100% successful feed. There's always something that's gone weird or gone wrong. It
does sound really nice when you get it right. And if they've got somebody there who's doing the sound, sometimes they're helpful. And you can be like, can you keep an eye on this for me, please? Can you make sure it looks at the right levels?
What are you using to take a feed from the desk?
It is the Zoom H6, I think it is.
So all your sound you're getting through the TX 660s.
Yeah.
For the ceremony, are you doing the usual registrar, groom, and anyone giving a reading? Is that how you're setting up, or?
Yeah, if it's I always find the people that are speaking to be a bit more stressful, because especially if you're getting there last minute and you don't know who they are,
like the readings,
and you've got to try and find them. People giving readings, and they, it's always ladies, and they've always got really nice outfits in, and then I go, here you go, here's your vape to put on. So if there's somewhere that they're reading from, if it's a lectern, then I'll quite often just kind of tape a Sony somewhere near it. Or if it's a bridesmaid, I sometimes just give them the Sony to hold with their reading, because I just hate the idea of they've either got to put it on them at the right point. They can't walk down the aisle wearing it. So you
give them like a little bit of a brief just beforehand and go, this is your mic, please hold it with your flowers.
Yeah, please hold it. Yeah. Yes, that sort of thing. Yeah.
I do the exact same. I'm like, this is, and we go through like a little run through together, and I get them to put it on themselves while I'm watching, because otherwise they put it on. Like, I've seen some absolute monstrosities. Like the TX650, laughing, it looks like a vape put on the normal way. If you put it on the wrong way, it's even more hideous.
I know. I had a registrar at my last wedding, and she had it on her jacket, and then her jacket sort of flipped open. Oh, no. And so it was the back of the Sony. I said to the photographer after, I'm so sorry, it's going to look awful in the thing. She was like, I didn't even notice it. But yeah, like this full pen on the jacket.
It just reminded me, I had one where it randomly fell off the registrar, and I saw it fall to the ground. And then as she was like, she kind of shifted and she trod on it. And she trod on his TX650, but didn't move. Like, it must have felt really uncomfortable under her foot, but she was stood on the TX650 for the entire ceremony. It's like it's comedy sketch. Like, how on earth can you stand on one of those things and not notice, right?
Yeah. Maybe she did, and she was just like, I don't want to move too much and then trip on it or something.
Oh yeah, or she just didn't like it. I'm going to knock this vape off and stamp on it.
I had a similar thing. I just bought some loop earplugs.
Yes.
Because I was just worried about my ears, and I put them in for the first time at a wedding, and one fell out, and I literally watched this woman crush it with her heel. This is like, oh no.
That's a good 40 quid as well, isn't it?
Yeah, they're really expensive. It's just.
So, one of the final quickfire question, which is definitely not very quickfire. Favourite wedding filmmaker? Who is yours? I asked that like Yoda, didn't I? Who is yours?
Who is
your favourite wedding filmmaker?
Well, I was trying to think a little bit out of the box, because everyone always says the same people, and I do love all the people that everyone always mentions. When I first got into wedding videography, I learned most of what I had at the beginning from Adam Wing, all his YouTube videos.
Yes.
Because I haven't got any sort of film background, so that was where I got all my information. So obviously I loved his work and have followed him for years. But when I'm trying to think how old I was, but from my young teens, my best friend at school, her stepsister was a wedding videographer. So that was kind of my first introduction to videography.
Yes.
And they're a company called Gorgeous Films. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I'm not sure I have.
but they, at the time, they'd done some like really big weddings, some celebrity weddings. So it just seemed like a really cool job to do. And their style of videography is very natural. It's sort of similar to mine in a way. It is kind of just capturing everything as it is. So I really loved that. And I can remember going over to their house and seeing them all editing away. But that was years and years before I ever thought of it as a career option. But yeah, I remember when we got married, I got in contact with them and said, can I get a quote? And I remember getting the quote back and going, absolutely, that is nowhere in our budget.
How much was it?
I mean, I think it was only a couple of grand, but we got married 8 years ago now. So for us, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it was probably quite a lot of money then, I imagine. But yeah, so I still follow their work. They're brilliant. And then I fell in love with the Lawsons when I discovered them.
Yeah.
Because they just seem to do everything that I like to do, but better. I was just like, everything just looks so joyful in their films. So I really, really like doing those. I'm just rambling about all the videographers that I like now.
That's good. I'm the same with the Lawsons. I absolutely love them. I seem to mention that in every podcast as well, but sometimes I look at their work, I need to stop looking at their work because it's just it just makes me feel but yeah, cool.
There's another guy I wanted to mention as well. Do you know Will War?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So
because he's not really a wedding videographer, but he has done weddings.
And because he does like Top Jaw, doesn't he? Like the kind of is it like a social media kind of about restaurants and stuff? But his Instagram is I love the little clips that he does. Have you seen that?
That's what I love about what he does, because it is just completely static shots of just everyday life. And he's done some wedding ones as well. Yeah. So just completely static shots that last quite a long time of just little clips of moments in the day. And that's kind of what I want to do with my films, but not that, but obviously put together.
Yeah.
But yeah, his works, because the guy he works with on Top Jaw was a guest at a wedding that I filmed. So that's how I discovered him.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's done some really cool stuff. So it's quite nice to see some videographers' work that's not necessarily weddings, because sometimes we just watch the same thing all the time. So it's good to kind of see some styles in different areas.
Absolutely. And yeah, I feel the same about that Will's work as well. Will War's work.
Will War, yeah.
Will's work. Yeah, because tried to like break that down for people that haven't seen them. So it's a carousel of videos on his posts, isn't it? And each one is a static shot, usually very wide, isn't it? It's very wide, but at the same time, it looks like it's got very shallow depth of field as well, which is kind of, you usually don't go side by side. And it's just the natural sound playing, isn't it? And it's just these little snippets, but they're really absorbing, aren't they? And they really makes you feel like you're there. I see a lot of that in your work, though, which I'd kind of like to break down to shortly. That kind of the use of ambient sound to take you in there. There's parts in your films where the music does drop away completely. And you let the natural ambient come through. Before we go into the edit side of that kind of thing, what are you doing to record ambient sound? Do you use an additional microphone attached to your camera, or is it just the on?
Yeah, it's just a Rode mic on top of the camera. Don't ask me which one it is.
Yes,
it's just a
like a shotgun mic.
Shotgun. Yeah.
Nice.
And it doesn't have to be absolutely amazing sound, because it's quite low within the film, so it tends to be alongside the music. Like you said, occasionally it does completely drop away if there's a moment like where she's reading a letter or something, and I haven't had an opportunity to properly mic her up, then I will kind of boost that sound a little bit so that they can hear it, because I think, and not necessarily in a highlights film, but in a full film where it doesn't have to be quite as polished, I just think even if it's not perfect, it's nice to be able to hear what was said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I've spent majority of my career cutting out all that stuff, apart from speech and ceremony. But that's the power we have as video. They're going to want to hear like what's going on. Like if we're making pretty images, just like a photographer, we need to be able to add that sound is what gives us that advantage and that, that next level kind of thing, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely.
That's just another element of my existential crisis that I go through every time I'm at a wedding. Cool. Let's go into how you got into wedding videography. So I really do like to know a bit of people's backstory, because I find it interesting how people's past lives influence how they shoot now and how they approach weddings. So how did it start for you? Where did you come from?
So, like I said, I've got no kind of film background at all. It was really a hobby. So we used to film like family films all the time. I can't even think what cameras that we would have been using. I say we, me and my sister were quite into it. So we'd film family films. And then my now husband, we got together when we were 16. So I've known him from way back then. And he had a Nikon, some DSLR, can't remember what it was. And so I sort of thought, ooh, kind of a professional looking camera, let me play with that. So we started using that for making those. And we put it through iMovie, put some really awful music in the background of it. Yeah. And then we went to my neighbour's at the time wedding, and my sister took this camera along, and she was the first one who filmed a wedding, and she put it all together. And I can remember coming in and watching what she'd made, and I sort of went, oh, it'd be really good if we could put some of the speeches just at the beginning with a bit of black and white slow-mo. That would look amazing.
You were a creative director initially.
I was. She's kind of like, no, I finished this. And I said, no, let me try it. I mean, we hadn't recorded any audio, so it was literally just what was off of the camera. So it sounded really terrible, but we put that in, and then we took it over to show them, and they were just in floods of tears. And I'd hate to watch the film. It would have been horrendous. But I think, however good or bad they are, they still have that kind of emotional impact. And so I was a little bit hooked on that. But we were quite young at the time. I went into teaching. We both went. My sister's quite a lot younger than me, so she was still in school. She was finishing her A-levels and things. But we did then go and do a few other sort of friends of friends' weddings. And eventually my sister decided to go off into photography. And I was a few years into my teaching career. I loved teaching, but it's very stressful and the workload was insane. And I was kind of thinking, what other options are there for me? So I said to my sister, would you mind if I just steal the business off you? I'm going to go and see if I can film weddings. And so we got married, and about 6 weeks after we got married, I handed my notice in at my teaching job. I was just really lucky because we were at a time in our life where we just bought a bungalow, so we had a mortgage, didn't need to worry about sorting that out with a proper income or anything. So I just said, I'm going to hand my notice in and see how it goes, and just, teaching's the sort of job that I could have walked straight back into, but I didn't need to. I just went straight from there, and just did some weddings for really dirt cheap. Probably took way too long to put my prices up, but it's kind of scary, isn't it, when you don't really know what you're doing. And just learn everything through watching so many YouTube videos. Did a few courses, went on all the Facebook groups, and went from there. Didn't look back.
What year was it that you went full time then?
So that was 2016, the year we got married. I should try and remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2016.
Oh, nice. And so can you remember how you were getting those initial weddings? Was it just a follow-on from your sister's kind of work that she'd got in?
Yeah, it was. It was just referrals, really. Obviously, I was doing it for really cheap, so people were quite happy to... I think that it was at the time where wedding videography was kind of coming back a little bit more. Yeah. And so it wasn't at the top of people's lists, so they were kind of going, oh, somebody's doing it for a bit of cheaper, we'll just do it, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like, which was good for me because it kind of kept the pressure off. But I was still getting the bookings. But it's funny because there's one of the first weddings that we ever shot. I still have weddings that date back to that one. So if I look through where they've come from and which weddings they came from, they go all the way back to this wedding that I shot like 8 years ago. It's all the same sort of friendship circle, which is lovely because you get to then go and see seem to see the same guests and things. But I always think, oh gosh, don't look at the original film. They've all got a slightly better version, each of the friends as they booked.
But they're priced accordingly as well, right?
Yeah, well, they are, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Because I love that when you have an inquiry from a wedding from years ago, and it's one of their friends, you're thinking, the pressure feels off a little bit because you think it's definitely going to be better than the film I did back then, surely.
Yeah. But then it does make it hard with pricing. I've had that occasionally where people have said, oh, well, my friend only paid this. And that was only last year. And I say, that's because I realised I suddenly need to put my prices up a lot more.
Are you good at sticking to your guns in that respect and just saying the price is the price?
I am now. Yeah. I don't think I have been in the past. I've been but yeah, because I only want to restrict to doing kind of those 20 weddings. Yeah. I don't really do any discounts anymore.
If someone gets me on the phone, my gosh, I just need to I need to just not pick up the phone, I can tell you now, because I've agreed to anything. I just don't like confrontation. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's so awkward, isn't it?
20p, 20p is fine, yeah, fine.
But the people I've given to discounts in the past, you always turn up to their wedding and it's the most lavish wedding, and you kind of think, oh, okay, right. Yeah. Didn't need the discount.
Can you remember the kind of steps that your pricing has taken, like the kind of increased steps?
I was charging around £1,000 for a long time. I mean, I did it, for next to nothing at the beginning, but I got up to that point and then I found it hard to kind of move much past that. I think £2,000 was like the real shining light that I wanted to get to. And I think it was for a lot of people that were in the same stage of me as that time. £2,000 seemed like the absolute goal. Yeah. So it was kind of exciting. I was at 1950 for a really long time. I can't quite get up to it. I think sometimes you just have to make quite a big jump. Yeah. So rather than, because for a little while I'd sort of put it up by about £100, and then you just think, no, actually it doesn't make any difference. No. That small amount. So yeah, to put it up.
I feel like weddings below £2,000, I feel like it's all in £500 increments. So if you're if you're 2,200, you might as well be 2,500. Yeah. It's like you might as well jump right up. I feel that's how it is. So your first bookings to get started, you were like word of mouth and referral. How do you get majority of your bookings now?
Probably through other suppliers, so mainly photographers, but sometimes venues. It does come from referrals as well, quite often, but I have got quite a few photographers that recommend me. I think they quite like working with me because I am fairly sort of in the bushes, so they can sort of get on with their job, and I don't come with a lot of equipment, so it doesn't affect them too much, which is really nice. I like working with the same people. I love working with new people. It's nice to have those discussions with new people, but it is nice when you're working with the same people because you just get used to the way that they do things. But yeah, and then Instagram occasionally. Yeah. A little bit from there.
Are you good at posting on Instagram in terms of how often you do it?
Not really. I do a teaser for every wedding and that goes up, and that's basically all that I put on Instagram. Occasionally when I've been editing for a while and I get a bit bored, I think, oh, well, I'll make a reel or something and put it up. But I think there's so much pressure to put so much on Instagram, and I don't know how effective it actually is because no one really understands the algorithm and it's constantly changing. So the pressure to kind of keep up with that, it's just too hard. So I have my set way of doing it, put my teasers up, and they tend to be really effective because everybody was at the wedding will then, comment on them. If I can get the couple to collaborate with me, then that makes it even better. And it's just an easy way to do it because I'm putting the work into that anyway. That I do that with all the packages, so I may as well use that as my social media content.
So that every wedding is getting a teaser, are they? Every single one. Yeah. And are you posting every single one?
Pretty much. Yeah. Occasionally, if it's not quite what I want to show, I will take it down. I always feel really bad to the couple if they've been quite often they've been watching every single one. If theirs doesn't then come up, they just think, why is my wedding not there? So sometimes I'll post it and it'll be up there for a few weeks and then I'll take it down at a later date.
Do they know? Do they get notified if they're a collaborator or something?
Well, I might not collaborate with them.
And that's how we know.
And that's how they know.
But it's got nothing against the people, is it? It's just a case of we have to, I don't know, kind of curate what we want to, we have to show the stuff we want to shoot. So it involves kind of being quite strict with our curation, doesn't it? So I find that awkward. That's what kind of puts me off posting, because I don't want to post too much, because then I'm worried that everyone will expect me to post it. But yeah,
absolutely.
But then from a terms of getting work point of view, like when you get a couple collaborating, that pushes you out to so many people, and then if the suppliers collaborate as well, and what your teasers are they done at the end of the process, or do you do them before the main edit, or?
Yeah, so they're usually put up kind of the day after or 2 days after.
After the wedding?
After the wedding, yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of my day after.
Well, okay. We need to talk about that then. So how on earth are you doing that? And how are they structured? Is it just B-roll that's put together, or are you using some A-roll audio and things like that? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of like a little mini highlights. So they're about a minute long. I tend to just kind of grab a little bit of audio from the speeches. I can usually tell which bit I'm going to put in on the day as I'm listening. You can kind of go, oh yeah, that's the bit that's going to make it in, which it doesn't always, because sometimes then I get back and realize it's not long enough, or doesn't quite fit with what I wanted, or it's too long. So it'll just be, I'll kind of go and grab that little bit, and then I'll pull out some couple stuff. I'll get some things from bridal prep, the first kiss, confetti, a little bit of dancing. And I did that to a track.
So are you having to edit your speeches to have the audio and everything synced? Are you doing your multicams in order for this process, or are you literally just grabbing it?
So I tend to do the multicams, so they're all set up to go, but I then don't go through and actually do all the cutting between the angles.
Right, yeah.
So I make the file, and then I'll just go to the bit that I know that I want to use and just find that little bit. So I have occasionally then done the whole speeches, so it's ready, and then when I come back to it, which is great when I do that, because I think, oh, I've already done the speeches. But it just takes too much time, so I just tend to get to the bit that I want.
Are you pre-selecting a music track ready for this, or do you just pick it once you've...
No, go and pick it, which I should probably do, but it's hard to know until the day what they want. And that's the most annoying thing, just sitting and trying to find some music. And
are you using kind of licensed music, or are you, if it's with it being a reel, are you using like the music that's part of Instagram kind of thing, like the popular text?
No, I am just using Musicbed, just because it's easier to find what I want on there. I tend to keep it really simple, just something like a piano instrumental. And then, and if I can get something that is about a minute long, that's easier, because I can just use that time. I'd rather, because usually I'll find like a track and it will have a nice piano bit at the beginning, but then it's hard to kind of end, because it will sort of get to a crescendo where it's kind of going to finish the rest of the song. So then you have to try and mix it around a little bit and like clip off the end of the track or something and try and pull that bit in. But so try and find a minute long if I can. But you get through them quite quickly though.
Yeah.
I'll be listening into it and thinking, have I used this before? And then I have to go check all the songs I've used.
So would that bother you then if you'd already used one before? Do you always want to try and keep it original each time?
I wouldn't mind using the before, but not in one that I've done recently. Because I'd hate for it to be on Instagram and kind of, if someone was looking at my Instagram and flicking through a few and then they hear the same track, whether they'd even notice, I don't know. But
you'd notice, and it'd bother me. It'd bother me as well. Like I'm okay with using tracks, but like you say, I don't want it to be in recent memory for people. I don't want my couples to know, basically.
Yes, yeah. Have I heard this before?
So are you diving into that the day after the wedding then, did you say?
If I can, yeah. And I think I'm better at doing them if I do it the day after, because you kind of have that buzz from the wedding.
Yeah. You
can remember everything. You can sort of go, oh, that shot was really nice. Where was that? And then I pull it in and realise it's not nice at all. It's awful.
Are your couple expecting it? How quickly do you tell your couple they're going to get a teaser?
So I haven't really specified it. I say within a few days. At the wedding, when I say goodbye, I'll say I'll send you something in the next few days. Yes. But then I try and do it the day after. So they're always like, oh, I can't believe that you've done that so quickly. But it's just nice.
Brilliant. Yeah, because very much like when people get me on the phone, when I'm saying goodbye to my couples, I'm at my weakest as well. So sometimes I go, I'll get you something tomorrow. Why have I just said that? Why have I just...
And then I'll occasionally send it to them, because I send it to them on VidFlow and say, oh, is it all right if I share it? And they say no. And I think, oh, God, I put all that effort to get it to you to the next day, and now you can't share it. Oh. But then I don't know whether it still has a similar effect, because although they're not putting it on Instagram, they are getting my targeted audience, because they're sending it to all their family and friends. It's not just going to random Instagram world. And then it's usually those ones where I don't know how accurate VidFlow is at looking at views, but it's usually those ones that have got like hundreds of views, because they haven't put it on social media. They've shared it through there. So clearly it's going to the right people. Yeah. It's fine, but it's just soul destroying, because it's always the really nice weddings, isn't it?
Always. Absolutely. Do you have like your logo on at the end or anything like that, so people that are watching it not on socials know it's you? Or
yeah, so it does say Thompson Wedding Films at some point, usually at the beginning or the end. Just pop it in.
I need to get on this for next year. I absolutely do. I need to start putting bits out there, because I'm horrendous at posting on social media. I'm even considering culling on the wedding day itself, similar to how I used to do with photo. I'd cull on the wedding day. I reckon I could be culling my B-roll during the break. And then have stuff lined up ready for the teaser to put together. But I guess you're not doing that. You're just doing that all the next day. You're doing the whole process the next day, as soon as possible.
Yeah, I really like that break time in the day. I mean, I know it can drag on, but I sort of think of that as kind of a networking time.
Yes.
A lot of people who do all the behind the scenes Instagram stuff on the day, I sometimes work with photographers, and you go to sit down for the meal and they've gone off because they're walking around the venue kind of doing hi, I'm here at this venue filming, and I'm terrible at doing those. But equally, I don't know how effective they are. I don't know how much people are really watching them. And I'd rather be sat with that photographer having a chat, especially if it's someone I don't know, if it's someone that I get on with. I think if we have a really nice chat, they might recommend me, we might work again together. Yeah. Whereas if I go and do like a video working around the venue on my Instagram, how much work is that going to get me?
Yeah.
And it doesn't just have to be the photographer. Like other suppliers, I'll chat to the venue staff and like anyone that's working there.
Because we are quite often the last in the chain, aren't we? So anyone can recommend us. Like my times as a photographer, basically the only thing that's booked before the photographer is the venue quite often. Yeah. So venues are pretty much the only referral source. But us videographers, I've had makeup artists get me weddings, and and all sorts of people, like DJs. I've had bookings from DJs before for
DJs,
weddings.
Yeah.
So it's always worth. I mean, I just like to chat anyway. So
that's true. Yeah, that's what I like to do too. I don't. It's not always the way though. I have had a few weddings this year where they've put me before the photographer, and I sort of go, "Oh, this is my opportunity to to recommend to some friends now."
Have you ever had it where there's not been a photographer at all?
No, I've had parts of the day, so where they've just booked the photographer for a few hours, but not the whole day, no.
Have you worked with a content creator?
Not yet.
No, me neither.
I've heard all the stories.
We've got an episode coming up soon with a content creator, so I'm going to get to the bottom of it all, cool. So we can find out how that all works. But I don't know many people that have, so I don't know if it's just one of those things that we hear about, or perhaps they're just taking out the bottom part of the market for videographers they're getting swapped out for content creators.
I don't know. I was chatting to a photographer the other day who said that a couple that they had couldn't afford a videographer. And so she recommended a content creator. And I thought that was interesting that she's kind of actively recommending them as an alternative to a videographer. Yeah. But then if people can't afford a videographer, then I guess that is an option. But yeah, it depends. I don't know. There's a big conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't wait to have that conversation and find out what it's about really, and just see where it lies in the interest. Because I think whatever content creators are doing is going to inform how we go forwards. Whether they die out and it just means how they're delivering their footage is what couples are going to want from us going forward. I think it's going to be something along those lines. So yeah, interesting.
I do think that there's some. I was filming a wedding the other day where they had a really epic entrance into the wedding breakfast, and there was so much going on. There's people doing confetti cannons everywhere. I could never get it all, and I think even if you had a couple of shooters, you couldn't get it in the same way that someone would just stand there with their phone and get it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Although it wouldn't look anywhere as pretty as how we would capture it, you can't, if you were just stood there with your phone, you would get all of it.
Yeah.
But then a guest would do that. I don't know. I suppose it's just you've got someone nominated doing it.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's a whole conversation.
Get a content creator in to swap out. All your guests have to leave their phones at home, and you get a content creator to get that footage. And
that would be brilliant.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Cool. Now, so quite often I ask people about their style in shooting, but what I found is probably a more interesting question is, what are your pet peeves in wedding films? What are you not looking to shoot? What's the anti-style? What's the opposite of your style, basically?
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite picky on how to do detail shots. I don't really do a lot of detail shots, but I hate it when people have just got the dress randomly hung. I'd rather have like the bride having her makeup done and the dress is in the background. So it's sort of a feature of the day rather than here's the dress. And equally, I think you've discussed it before, things like filming them have their makeup done and, you know, the groom in the window having their jacket on. It is just, I just feel like I could do it before because everyone does it and it's what we've always done. And so I will get the groom to do that window shot, but I won't always put it in. I'd rather him be putting his jacket on with all of his friends and have them kind of help him and than him be stood by the window, because it just doesn't really make sense as to why he'd be doing it. So I won't set up too many of those shots if it's happening naturally. I mean, I know if the light's terrible, it looks awful, and so we'll kind of say, "Oh, can you guys come and do that?" But I would rather have it happen naturally, than to have those kind of staged shots. And again, kind of like all the details in around where in the setup. I won't do lots of kind of stylized movement and things. I just want a couple of little shots of the things that they've put the time and their money into. But it takes like a very small portion of my films because I want it really to be all about the people that are there.
Yeah. And is that the most important thing for you, like the people, the relationships, and the human element of the day?
Yeah, I think so. And that's why I quite like to shoot quite static, because I don't want anything that's distracting from what's going on and from those people.
Let's go into a bit of your editing, and we've spoke briefly about it. The full films that you produce, which we're looking similar to kind of a doc edit style. I really want to take a bit more of a deep dive into this because quite often when I'm talking to people about their packages, their long films, everyone's format seems to be very similar. They got like a 3 to 5 minute, then like a 10 minute with a similar structure of prep, ceremony, and then party. Yours is a very all-encompassing edit, but it is crafted very interestingly as well. It's not what I'm calling it a doc edit, but for me a doc edit is something that's just thrown in. This is definitely very more considered than that. So trying to explain it through audio is quite hard, but can you talk us through the structure of the film, how it's laid out, but and also how you put that together?
So I did for a short period, I changed my packages slightly so that I was doing a longer version of the highlights, so it's kind of like 15 minutes long. But I found that when you're still using the speeches over footage in those longer edits, there wasn't enough opportunity to put some of that ambient sound in, and it sometimes takes away from what's happening in the film. So I wanted to be able to put all the footage together and not have any kind of distraction, any speeches going behind it. So it kind of runs from the beginning of the day right to the end. As it happened, all the clips are put to music, but there's a lot of opportunity for that ambient sound to come through because there's nothing else going on as well. So I tend to start it by putting all the footage in. I have separate projects for different parts of the day. So I'll have a project that's bridal prep, drinks reception, evening. So I'll divide them up into those bits, put them all down into a timeline and just go through and find the bits of the clips that are good to keep in. And then I've got a list of tracks that I use from Musicbed. that are separated into those different parts. So there'll be ones that suit bridal prep, and then drinks reception and the evening. So I'll go through and find those. Quite often I hate all of them and have to go and find some more. But that then just add to that library. And then I find that I spend forever on that first 30 seconds. I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah.
But like, I just need that first bit to be really good, and then I can go. And then I try and chop and change between bridal prep and groom prep if I can. So I do like a little bit with the girls, and then go to the boys, and then back to the girls again for when she's getting her dress on, and reveals and bits. And yeah, like I said, lots of ambient sound in there. I'll have longer clips if it needs it. So if there's kind of present opening, or like her reading the letter, it sometimes is longer, to include all of those bits. Because I think that's what we do when we're doing like a more of a stylized edit. We'll kind of just put a little snippet of it in, and it doesn't give enough time to really feel the emotion of it. Because in her highlights, I'll just skip to the bit where she starts crying when she's reading the letter. But actually, the build up to that is quite nice to see her reading the first bit, and then she gets to the bit where she gets emotional. So I wouldn't necessarily put like a whole long letter in, but just a little bit of a longer clip so you can feel that a bit more.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it. It was like, it's because I deliver raw footage, and when I deliver my raw footage, I do something similar where I slam it all onto a timeline, but no music. But then when I'm watching that back, I'm thinking there is some massive value in this to actually hear the ambient sounds and see it play out. It might not be the most pretty, but it's definitely got a lot more character and soul to it than when I'm just doing fast cuts to music.
Yeah.
But so the way you're delivering this, it's made me like question everything I'm doing. Which is why I wanted to quiz you on it, because I thought it was a fantastic way of doing it. And like I said, so it's all B-roll with music and the ambient sound from those B-roll clips. There's no speeches at this point, because the speeches are all delivered in a big chunk as part of it. But so the transition on the film that I've seen specifically, the transition into the ceremony was really cool, because it gradually fades out to then become your full ceremony multicam in there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But at the start of it, you kind of included the aisle walk. The music slowly faded to the ceremony audio. Had you chosen a song that was in the same key as the music in the ceremony so that it blended, or was it just complete luck?
Yeah, no, I do kind of consider that when I'm choosing the music from the beginning. And have you used that tool on Musicbed where you can put in a song and then it gives you similar songs?
Yes, the AI search, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very hit and miss. Sometimes it's the stuff that comes out is not great, but I do tend to use that and see if there's something similar to the song that they had for their aisle walk.
Right.
So I can kind of match that, and then look at the key and things, and the instruments that are being used in their aisle walk song. Because I don't always use their aisle walk song. Sometimes it doesn't fade out. Sometimes I'll just use the music that I've chosen as for the whole of the aisle walk. It really depends on how much music that I had left over. Depends on how good the audio is that I got from their actual aisle walk. If the aisle walk music was played by somebody live, then I really want to try and put that in if I can, because it's not like just a standard song. It's been played in that style of whoever was playing it. So it's quite nice to include it. But yeah, it all depends on basically how the edit's gone, whether I'll put that in or not. But I like to if I can, because it obviously they've chosen it for a reason.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah,
it's nice to include it.
So you're bringing the actual sounds from the day into it, and that's what I found really interesting, like how it did blend from your Musicbed track into the live music at the ceremony so seamlessly. I thought she's definitely got to have used the same key here, and she knows she's got some musical knowledge.
Yeah, keep it in mind.
Yeah, so like I don't know if everyone knows this, but for people that don't, if you a song in a certain key, if you get another song in that same key, then they're going to merge into each other almost seamlessly, aren't they? They're going to blend into each other. But then there's also kind of like certain keys mix well with other keys as well.
Yeah, there's like complementary keys, so it doesn't have to necessarily be the same key, but it can if there's certain ones that go together that you can choose, and it blends in the same way.
And then your knowledge of that is making you be able to do these beautiful transitions from a music.
I mean, you say my knowledge, Google's knowledge.
Yeah, that's what all knowledge
Little
is,
bit of
though,
research.
right? So
Yeah.
now it's yours. Now it's your knowledge. Yeah, I absolutely love that bit. And so it blended into the ceremony. Bride walks down the aisle, but then you hear her. She's speaking. She says to the groom, she says, "You look brilliant," or something like that. Or you look lovely," or something.
Yeah, I love it when they say something, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll really mouth it to each other. They don't actually say it, and say. But it's nice if you actually get the audio, and then that's where it's good to just use the song that they come down the aisle to, that ambient sound, because sometimes it's hard to include what he's said without picking up the music that's being played as well. So if you're using that music anyway, then it's fine and it flows well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lovely moment when they do that.
And that's the kind of stuff that I really want in my work, but the way I am creating my films does not allow that to happen, because like you say, it's really hard to bring that ambient of someone talking when there's music behind, like during the ceremony aisle and during the ceremony walk. And the ceremony walk is the point when something really nice is said, because they've not seen each other all morning. They've finally seen each other all dressed up for their wedding. It's guaranteed to be a great moment, isn't it? So that's inspired me. So I need to be adding that to my work. Okay, so going further on, so from that point there, the ceremony plays out as its multicam version, doesn't it?
Yes.
Kind of. And say for a civil ceremony, because the example I've seen was a church ceremony. For a civil ceremony, when it comes to the signing, what happens then in your multicam? Do you just like fade out during the signing, or do you film the whole signing?
I don't do any of the signing, so it will cut when they kiss, and then it goes to them walking out.
Yeah.
So I might put in a couple of clips if I've had time, because I tend to pack down during that time.
Yeah.
If I get time, I'll have a couple of clips of like the guests chatting, or maybe a clip of them signing the register. But it's really hard to get anything natural at that point, because they're usually having the photographer direct them in a photo or something. But sometimes they'll have a little chat, and so I'll put a bit of that in, just to break up between the end of the ceremony and then going down the aisle. Because that can be hard if there's nothing there. The clip is literally the aisle of them kissing, and then again the aisle of them walking back.
So like a really weird jump cut.
It's a weird jump. So if I can get something else in between there, then I'll do that. And then the next set of music for the drinks reception, that can vary when that comes in as well, because sometimes I'll put in, as they're walking down the aisle, I'll just keep the ambient noise from that. Yeah. So it'll be kind of a little bit of the music that they had playing and the cheering and the clapping. So either the next set of music comes on from when they kiss, and then you don't kind of get that ambient noise as they come down the aisle, or it will kind of come in after the aisle walk, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it all just depends on how the day's played out.
And that bit when they're coming down the aisle, are you just relying on the on-camera sound to capture that, or do you leave one of your TX650s, 660s running somewhere? Or
no, it's just the on-camera.
Yeah, because you're packed up, you're ready to go. Then you want to be flying out there for that.
Yeah.
As soon as they're outside, with the confetti and stuff. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. And then we go into the drink section. We're back into the kind of format of B-roll with ambient sound. But there were points where there was the bride was singing. She was outside. It was like a marquee wedding.
Yes.
There was clearly like a live band outside, and there was the bride and one of the friends. They were singing to one of the songs, and you let the music bed song dropped away, and you let the ambient of that come through, and you had like a sequence, but you'd edited it like there was it was still B-rolled, but you had the continual track going underneath. So I assume you've just been quite clever with your B-roll there. You've had like one long track that you've recorded with all the sound on, and then B-roll over the top.
Yeah, so I think it was a song that I'd filmed quite a lot of B-roll from, and they'd been singing for quite a long time, and then I had like maybe 2 versions of the chorus that they were singing, or that part of the song that they were singing, from different angles, but I could cut them together to one of the chorus audios, which can be difficult to do because as I'm moving around, the sound
slightly changing
is changing, but it's good enough to kind of just include that little bit so you can hear them singing, because that's what that wedding, they were very much like that crowd. They were kind of singing for a lot of the day, so it was nice to put it in.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Because I've had moments like that at weddings. I thought, that's cool. It doesn't fit in how my work's constructed. It just does not work. But then it would be good value for my couple. So I'm thinking I should get them to buy the raw footage kind of thing. But this method really does allow for that. And it was such a good watch. I really enjoyed watching it. And then, so you'll go, when it comes to the chronological point of the day where the speeches happen, in your film, they then play out in full, don't they? And they are literally back to back, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
and I think what puts people off doing that is it maybe appears that it would be quite boring because it's a long film, and that I think it's their wedding film. I think that they would probably quite like the idea of sitting down and watching this whole film rather than having those kind of separate films to watch and going into them. It's like it's a whole experience to start from the beginning to the end. I'm not suggesting that they're watching that all the time. That's what the highlights is for, so they can watch the highlights over and over. I'm thinking the full film is more kind of something that they watch on their anniversary.
Yeah.
And that's how I sell it. I kind of say, you might watch your full film with, your closest family. It's not necessarily going to be something that you share with everybody, and that's what your highlights is for. And it's interesting because people will always say, we love the highlights, we love how you put it together, but the full film's really special. And it's hard to hear that because I don't put as much, I'm not as creative with the full film. I put like heart and soul into the highlights. That's my little masterpiece. And you think that's the bit I want them to love. But actually they like the full thing because it is, I don't know, I think they maybe can feel the emotion more because they're going through the whole day right from the beginning to the end.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And it was not good for me watching this film, I'll be honest with you, because it was all these existential crises I've been having about my work. This was like proving them completely right, like completely true. Like I felt complete joy watching that film. Even though I don't know this couple, don't know them at all, but I could see the value in every single shot that was put in there, and especially how you use the ambient sound, stuff that I'm just stripping out left, right, and centre and getting rid of and throwing to the cutting room floor. Yeah. You were utilising in a beautiful and really emotive way, and it's basically changing how I think I'm going to go forward. But like you say as well, when it comes to you got the speeches in that big section. The fact that they are seeing the day chronologically as it was, they are getting to experience it again properly and in that flow with all those little emotional payoffs along the way. It comes to that big section of the speeches. That's what they did in the day. They got to that point of the day. They watched all the speeches. They'll feel like they're there. And then when it came after the speeches, you're going into the party section. What I really loved was, again, your B-rolling. And my gosh, you had a lot of B-roll, and particularly kind of...
I think I stayed quite late at that wedding.
Was it like one of those weddings where it was just like flowing?
Don't want to go home.
What I really liked as well was you got a lot of B-roll of when the guests were sat down during the dinner. It may have been just after the dinner. Yeah. But that's the kind of point of the day where sometimes like, should I be filming now? Do people want to come around when they're eating? But you've got some lovely interactions between guests. And I suddenly found myself really... as the bride and groom in their shoes, thinking, this is what I would want to see. I would want to see my guests interacting with each other over the dinner that we've bought for them. And so it was, because usually I find like after speeches, if the speech is like after the dinner or whatever, I don't usually have much then until the party starts. But you'd really made sure that you'd captured quite a lot. Also, it was summer's day, right? So there's the light was pretty. It
all depends on how the day's set up, isn't it? Like sometimes they do just go straight into dancing after that. But there can be some really nice interactions when they've finished eating. And I don't think anyone was eating at that point. Maybe it was dessert. I think dessert's not as bad to be filming during that time. Yeah. Because they tend to, most people don't even eat it, do they? There's always loads left on the table. It really is, and if we don't get any, I just think, so sad. I could be eating that. But yeah, and depending on how it's been served, there'll be tables that are finished, and so you can kind of go in a little bit and get some, because most couples will get up and go and see people during that time, so it's a nice time to go in. But otherwise, it's then back outside sometimes, isn't it, during that time? And then and I always say to couples when I do the pre-wedding call, that that's my favourite part of the day, because you're relaxed and all those moments, like all the formal bits are done.
Yes.
So it's
all
they can
behind
enjoy
them.
it.
They can relax and actually and they've had a few drinks, maybe they've been fed. It's the first
I've stopped
time.
saying that on pre-wedding calls though. You always used to say, you'll have a few drinks, you'll feel much more relaxed. And I definitely lost a booking because it was a no alcohol wedding.
Oh no way! Yeah. And that's more and more of a thing, isn't it now?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So I stopped saying that.
We live and learn.
Yeah.
So it was so obvious that you were grafting. You are like filming. Like there's not much time. There's not much rest time for you on a wedding day, right? You're in there and you're here, there, and everywhere grabbing B-roll, and predominantly people. You're looking for interactions with people, and
I'm trying really hard to get everybody in if I can. I always hate it, like later in the wedding where you realise that one of the couples has a sibling that you've not even noticed or something.
Always a brother.
Yeah. And they mention them in the speeches. You think, oh my God, I haven't. And I think because I don't film group shots. Occasionally I'll come along if they're doing like the bridal party or something.
Yeah.
So we're not, like a photographer was obviously seeing all those main people when they do their group shots. We're not necessarily doing that. So unless you notice them kind of in the ceremony where they're sat down or you've met them in the morning, it can be hard to pick out those main people. So I just feel really like I want to try and get everybody, a little clip of everybody, so that I've got something to cover me. I'd hate the idea of like a main person being left out. So I'm just going as much footage as I possibly can.
I love it. Yeah, it was. It made me feel quite guilty at certain points looking back at it. To be honest, but
then it takes longer to edit, so they get their films probably later. I don't know, but
it's well worth it.
That security.
So good. And then it came to like the first dance section, and then you kind of, that was quite interesting actually. So it dropped the Musicbed track dropped away again, and we had the ambient sound come in. So we had the ambient audio, the ambient audio for the first dance. But then you kind of like, that was kind of, I felt like that was maybe cut up in chronological order as well. So it kind of, you sort of started the dance and dancing together, and then the guests came in, but then it kind of cut back to the start of the dance as well. So it was creatively cut throughout that, but having the ambient sound all underlying that.
Yeah, so I don't always use the first dance song. It all depends on what they had and whether the audio is good enough. Because the audio it isn't great from recording that, but I just think for the full film it's fine. But yeah, I think that specific order of them, I'd gone from where they're dancing and everyone's around the outside watching them, to clips where other guests are dancing, and then back to a shot where they're in the middle again and everyone's watching them. But it was just because the music that was happening at that point fitted to the part of the recording that I was using. So I'd found, I think, the first section, but there's bits of that have repeated. So if I've caught it from different angles, then I can put it back in. I was probably I didn't have enough footage to fill that bit, so I was like, well, I'll have to use some bits when other people are dancing and fill that bit in. But there was a really nice moment where they kissed just at the end of that section of the music, so then needed to come back to the beginning. But I think it fitted quite nicely because it was sort of rounding off that moment where they were dancing together. And then I think at a later stage they were sort of up on people's shoulders, and then again they're kind of singing along, and you can see their mouths sounding out the right words. So it's just nice when it works. Yeah, you can put them together.
You basically made it feel like a multicam edit of that moment, but how it was put together, it felt like really polished as well, and it jumped around in chronological order of time, and only we noticed that because like we're videographers. But I also like that about it. I just found it really interesting, and that was something else I found in your work as well. You quite often do like a jump cut, which is something I'm often scared of doing, but the way that you were doing it really worked. And and I guess in these full films as well, they're polished, but also they sit somewhere in between rough and ready and polished, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of course.
You're with these films, you're looking for the emotional payoff and things that are value to your couple, rather than trying to make...
So I'll put things in that are not perfect if I feel like they're really valuable to the couple, if there's a lot of emotion in them.
But saying that, these jump cuts that you did really worked. and I'm trying to think of an example of it. I think it might have been how, because even though it was the same shot, you had moved yourself so like it wasn't matching in terms of focal length and distance, and I was thinking, I really like that. I think I want a bit of that. I really like how it was keeping the moment kind of genuine by not cutting away from it, by staying on it, but like, and the jump cut kind of kept you in that, and it kind of almost brought a bit of emphasis into it, which was really interesting because I've always just avoided it because I think, don't do a jump cut. Do you know what I mean? Like, but watching that film and how it works, I started thinking, I'm going to start definitely doing a few jump cuts.
I could try this.
Yeah, is that something that you're doing on purpose, or is it just kind of like something that's come together in the edit? Or
yeah, and I think it's sometimes where I just don't have enough. I want to use a moment, and I haven't got enough of that moment because I've moved halfway through it or something. So then I need to find some footage from elsewhere to kind of cover that bit in between.
Yeah.
Whereas quite often, if you weren't doing that kind of edit, like you said, you probably would just get rid of it, or you just show a small part of it, but then you don't get quite the emotional impact as you would if you had the full clip from it. So so sometimes it is a little bit of grabbing bits from elsewhere and then coming back around to it.
I loved it.
That makes sense.
Loved it. You've just given me a sea of problems now, mate, of how I want to
This
go
is the
forward.
problem with watching other people's work, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I can totally understand what I find that I'm questioning myself over and over again, and I keep bringing it up in the podcast, but I'm going to bring it up again, is I'm worried that my highlight film and my extended film sometimes aren't different enough. Whereas your full film and your highlight film are massively different.
Yeah, really different.
But in the way that you're putting your full film together, that is going to give you massive artistic license in your highlight film, because they are getting everything in that full film, like every moment, anything of any value. So when it comes to your highlight film, you don't have to like be accountable to anything, like keeping things
you can
in.
Cut out loads.
Is that how that works out for you? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I'm going through the full film, I'm putting in markers for bits that I really like and things that I want to keep in the highlights. But they don't then necessarily have to make it all in, because I think, well, if they're not in there, if they don't quite fit, they're still getting it in the full film. So it does give me a bit more flexibility to put in bits that I like more rather than bits that are valuable to them, or sometimes. So I can show off the things that I've filmed really nicely. And not feel guilty that they haven't got the bits that are maybe more valuable to them, but I haven't shot as nicely, if that makes sense.
I bet you rarely get people asking for any changes to your films, right?
Yeah, no, can't think of any times.
Yeah, because it's all there. Like, it's all there and beautifully put together. It's not just throwing raw footage at them. It's stunningly kind of crafting everything you've shot.
Yeah.
But it's not, though, is it? I can tell it's not everything you've shot, because it's unless you're like
no, definitely not. There's still lots that gets cut out. Yeah,
perhaps
and then because I want everything so static, a lot of what I'm filming is people doing nothing.
Yeah,
because I'm just waiting for that moment where they do something. So it is a lot of cutting that out.
Yeah, but you must. How many kind of clips are you coming away with from each wedding?
Something like 500 to 600, something like that.
Yeah. Oh man, your hit rate must be loads better than mine, because I'm similar, but I'm like mine. I don't have anywhere near as when.
But they can be quite long, and quite often I'll start filming someone, and then I go to the other person, and I haven't stopped in between. So it's like several options of clips within that one clip.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I mean, is it nice though? Because then I have to make sure there's nothing else good like at the end.
True. Yeah, but like it's those long takes are what I loved in that work as well. Like we keep saying about those moments that played out. They were brilliant. So I really enjoyed that. Whereas I'm always like, I feel like part of me is still a photographer in the way I shoot. Like, get in, change angle, try and get as many angles as something as quickly as possible. And only go for a few seconds, rather than being like a proper videographer and letting moments play out so I can actually use sound that I've recorded. But yeah.
Well, I think I don't know if you feel the same, but that's what I always used to be telling myself afterwards. So you sit in the edit watching a clip and think, I needed to hold it longer. I needed it longer. Hold it more. But yeah, that's how I get the longer ones now.
That's where we learn the most about ourselves as videographers during the edit, isn't it? That's where we learn what we're crap at or what we need to change. And I think every decision I've ever made in my business is just to make my edit easier for myself.
Yeah, definitely. And then you do something right and you think, oh, I've got to do that again next time.
And then that just becomes part of like kind of your kind of artillery then, doesn't it? And your workflow, and you add those new things in and they become second nature, and gradually over time we get that little bit better. From a point of view as people probably listening into how you put together these long films, they're probably thinking, oh, I bet that when it comes to the speeches playing out, I bet that's quite of a boring section. But I was saying, like, I liked how immersive it felt because you're playing the day out as it was. But also with your delivery from VidFlow, when you click on that full film, it then breaks it down into chapters that they can skip to, doesn't it? So they can actually skip to which section they want. So you've got like the preparations, ceremony, reception, speeches, party. Was that the categories, the chapters?
Yeah, it's those kind of ones. Yeah.
So they literally have full control.
So they can skip it. Yeah, if they want to.
Yeah. So like, and that was the only criticism I could possibly think of this delivery method. Like maybe people don't want to watch the whole speeches, but you've circumvented that by having it broken down into these chapters. And so it's brilliant. And
sometimes if it's a church wedding, I will ask them if they want everything in it, because that's where it can get really long. Sometimes if they if the vicar does like a really long, or what do they call it when they say their bit, it can go on forever. So I sort of say, do you want that included, or do you just want the vows bit? But most people just want all of it. So
do they? What do you do during the hymns? What are you filming then? Are you just keeping a wide from the back, or do you start trying to move around and get B-roll?
Yeah, the hymns I don't tend to put all of it in, because quite often that's the moment where I've chosen to go move cameras about if I'm not quite happy with what angles that they're at. Sometimes there'll be clips actually from there that don't make it into the full film that end up in the highlights, because I've taken a little clip of them singing together, and it's just cute because they tend to not be singing and they're just kind of chatting with each other, but it doesn't fit anywhere in the full film because I haven't got enough of a wide angle for the hymn, so I've had to cut it out, but then I'll kind of put it in the highlights. But yeah, if I can, I'll include like a verse or something of the hymns, and if I've got time, I'll take a little bit of footage of like some of the guests singing. But I don't know if it's that important. I kind of tend to listen to the couple and find out whether, because sometimes say, oh, we love this hymn, and I think, oh well, I'll get a bit of that one. But
especially if it's that Shine Jesus Shine song, that's absolute banger, that is.
I know, some of them are brilliant, aren't they?
Cool. So you've mentioned it a few times through our chat, kind of like your talk with the couples before, and kind of in terms of, I guess, setting expectations, but also finding out what's important to them. Can you talk us through your process before pre-wedding with your couples? What's the process that you're going through with the couples to get them prepared for the wedding day, and what do you need from them beforehand?
Well, I tend to try and keep it as close to the wedding as I can. So make it kind of like 3 or 4 weeks before. So they tend to have their timeline in place by then, or they've got a rough idea of it. And then I'll send them a questionnaire. It's not a very in-detailed questionnaire. It's kind of some of the key timings, who's going to be doing the speeches and things, just so I've got that information in front of me when I'm speaking to them. Otherwise, I never used to do that. I used to just ask them on the call. But then I feel like you're kind of just going through a checklist of information, and it becomes a little bit less personal. So then I've got kind of talking points with them, like from that information that they've given me. But yeah, I'll just go through the key points, kind of have a bit of a general chat with them before we go over anything. So, because sometimes that'll bring up things, they'll tell you like what they're really excited about. I don't necessarily ask them those specific questions. I don't want it to be like an interview, but if the conversation goes that way and they sort of, mention something that they've booked that they're really excited about, or they've been to dance lessons or something like that. And that's something I always ask is about the first dance, like what they've got planned for the first dance. Because I've had so many full choreographed dances that I've been completely unprepared for. And I'm kind of ready to do a sway, and I just want like a nice little clip of them swaying with their guests in the background, and then they break into this full choreographed dance, and I think, oh, I should have put like a tripod up for this with a static shot to get all of it. But so it's handy to know if they've got anything important going on for that.
Do you offer multicam first dances? So if they are doing like a choreographed one, do you like get your second camera out for it then?
Well, sometimes, but I wouldn't ever tell them that they're going to get it in full.
Yeah.
I've had one wedding once where they specifically asked for it, and I had a second shooter come and do that for me, because it's just I think it's too hard to do because you're in such a tight space a lot of the time. So to try and set that up, I had one the other day where the bride was doing like a surprise choreographed dance for the groom, and I did just put a second cam up on a tripod at the back just as like a safety that I could fall back on. But I'd said to her, I was like, are you bothered about having the whole thing filmed, because it's going to be quite tricky to do that? And she sort of said, no, that's fine. And most people don't, even if they've got the full thing. I don't know if that's just my couples, but I haven't really, apart from that one couple, I haven't had people request it. But it's just handy to know. I think it affects what angles I film it from.
Yeah.
Because I would always want the guests in the background, which I would still prioritise, but I might nip round a little bit to the front, because if they've kind of rehearsed something facing forward, it's nice to get a bit of that as it was supposed to be as well.
Yeah, because whenever they do like a dip or anything like that, they always do it towards the crowd, don't they? So yeah, I've been caught out because I'm the same as you. I want my back to the band and the ugly stuff behind me, and I want just guests. Yeah. But then if it's choreographed, they're doing everything towards the guests. You're like, I'm missing this.
I tell you, that's one of my pet peeves, a dip. I hate a dip. I hate that the dip has become such a trend, because they can never get it right.
No.
And they always do it midway down the aisle, and then they're looking awkwardly at each other before they do it, and it ruins the whole flow of that walking down the aisle. And just think, oh, don't do it.
It's so funny as well, because like when it works for photographers, though, doesn't it? Like, wow, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Like that picture, that moment is literally just for photographers, because for videographers, it is massively awkward. And I've had it where like the bride's had like a tiara thing on, that gets smacked off.
Yeah,
and it's just and the guests are all like, yay! Oh man, yeah.
It's just so sad. I really want that nice aisle walk, but it's ruined now by the dip.
yeah, absolutely. And it happens then they do it during the confetti now.
Yeah. I had one at confetti the other day where they nailed it, and it was really good. So it can be done, but...
Yeah. You just need to send that over now. Send that to people with how it's...
Yeah, here you go. This is how you do it.
Here's an example. And send a montage of all the terrible walks down the aisle. This is why you shouldn't do this.
Yeah,
that
just
shot.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Or at least work it out how you're going to do it. Practice it in your kitchen.
Yeah. But I think that's it. Because when I first started, there's none of these kind of trends that were about. But bride and grooms are just bombarded by them all the time. And so there's like a huge checklist of things that they want to try and do in the day. And it just makes it really hard work for them. And it does kind of cause these awkward moments where they're not fully embracing the moment. They're just thinking about the things they've been told that they need to do.
I feel like, especially from a photo point of view, we're definitely going back in time. Whereas the photographers now, it's all set up. It's all set moments where we went through a whole big documentary boom and capturing things naturally. Now, all the photographers I'm working with, they might as well just turn up half an hour before the ceremony, really, because they quickly set everything up, all the shots. Yeah. And it's going back to that, isn't it? Very much, and it doesn't work very well for video, unfortunately. Not these setup shots.
It's hard, isn't it? But I just think it makes couples more stressed out.
Yeah.
I mean, even like when the bride's putting her dress on this year, I've had loads of brides saying, "Oh, I've got to spray all my veil with perfume," because I think that's been a big thing. And then that just adds another thing to do. You know, what used to be just a little spray is now, can we do the whole veil? And
no one's sniffing your veil, mate.
They've got full boxes of all the stuff that they've been told on Instagram that they need just in case something goes wrong. And I know it's a great idea, but I just think it adds so much extra stress for them. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just say, don't worry about it. Just do it how you want to do it. And
who's been telling these bride and grooms to have their speeches scattered throughout the dinners this year? Like, I don't. Has it been the same for you that nearly all year?
Mine's not been too bad this year, but I had maybe last year. But yeah, I tried to squash that as much as I can in a pre-wedding call.
Oh, would you go down that route then? Would you actually mention that?
I'm surprised caterers don't, because it must be so hard work for them.
Yeah.
I think maybe they do in some occasions, because sometimes people say, "Oh, we thought about splitting them up, but we decided not to." So I don't know who's telling them not to, but
I haven't got the balls to tell anyone, to be honest. I'm like, because at the same time, I think if they've chose that, it's so specific that they must really want it. They must really want it to spread out the day and spread out the speeches to the guests. So I just think I don't want to be thought of as a diva, like kind of telling them. But at the same
I don't
time,
try to make it out that it's for me. I try and make out it's for them. So I'll say it's really nice for them to introduce each other, and it flows better, doesn't it? Kind of if the father of the bride then hands it over to the groom, it's a lot better, and you don't have to recollect people all the time. Because they all go off to the toilet and they all go outside to have a drink or whatever, and then you have to call them back in. But I do understand people's point. I don't mind it if it's kind of split up a little bit, so they do some before the food and some after the food. They do a couple at either side. That's fine. But it's like when they do one between every course, and you can't sit down for more than like 5 minutes because you're up again.
And it means it takes longer, like you say, because you're gathering people up. But it's right what you say there, because me saying that I don't want to feel like a diva, that's probably the wrong mentality to have, because at the end of the day, they've probably never got married before. And we're the experts at this, and we know that it's not just about us having a break. I'm not too fussed about that, if I'm completely honest. It's more a case of it's going to be chaos and everything is going to run out on time. It's just not going to be a good situation for anybody. So as the expert in that situation, I should be telling them it's not good for these reasons and for you.
And there's loads of things you'll think of, like, and I say like, sometimes you end up with catering staff will walk around. Because sometimes they're having to like clear the tables when people have started doing speeches occasionally, because otherwise they'll never get the next course out. So I think there's a few points that you can, and they've made this decision because they've been to a wedding where the speeches have gone on forever. But I think the solution to that is just to tell people to don't talk that long, not just try and split up the speeches. But
absolutely,
I don't know. Some people, we can't change their mind.
That's true. That's true.
You just have to have it like that.
We can try.
But it's worth having the conversation, I think.
Absolutely. Hi guys, it's Rue here, just briefly interrupting the episode to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Musicbed. Musicbed really is the best platform for licensing music for your wedding films. They have a huge database of amazing songs and brilliant search control, so you can really hone in on the type of song that you need for your edit. Chatting to all these incredible filmmakers during the podcast, one of the repeated themes that I've noticed is that they're all using Musicbed to license their music. I myself have been using it for the last 6 years and really don't think there's anything else in the market that comes close. If you'd like to try Musicbed out for yourself, click the link in the description and you'll get a 14-day free trial where you can download and keep 3 songs to use in your projects, and you can see firsthand how good the music selection is. Now let's get back to the episode. So one thing that we wanted to chat about on this episode specifically is kind of work-life balance, because I know you've been doing quite a few things, haven't you, to kind of create a decent work-life balance for yourself. And I'm assuming the fact that you've limited yourself to 20 weddings a year is part of that. Can you talk me through what you're kind of doing, what you've experienced in order to, and how you're trying to negotiate your business going forwards to work, so your business is working for you rather than you working for your business?
Yeah, and I think it all depends on what everyone's situation is. I mean, I'm lucky that like my husband's got a job as well, so we're kind of a split income between us for the household. So it's not all on me. So I can 20 weddings, and I'm at a price point now where 20 weddings is good enough for us. I know it's obviously going to be a lot more difficult for people that are not charging as much. You've got to do a lot more weddings to make up for that, and so that's why it's obviously naturally decreased over time. And I think it's hard, like I said earlier about putting prices up. It is quite hard because you have access to everybody's work now. We can all see each other's work. A lot of people have prices on their website, and we all go and see what other people are charging. And you might look at somebody else and think, oh, well, they're charging that much. Is my work as good as them? Is it worth it? But I think it's not necessarily just the quality of what you're offering. It's got to work with like how it's going to work it within your lifestyle. So I can physically really only do about 20 weddings because of the way that it works with what my husband's doing. He's in the wedding industry as well. He's working weekends. So for childcare for us, we can't both be doing, I can't be doing back-to-back weddings as well, and he's working all of the weekend as well. So we need to work out a balance with that. So I need to price my weddings accordingly so that doing 20 is enough. So it's kind of, they're paying this price to get my films and also to get me specifically. So if they like the work, that's the price I can do it at. And so if they want to have me, then that's the price that they need to pay, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, sorry to go back into what you were saying, because obviously your husband he's a magician, isn't he? And
he is.
so
Yeah.
Wedding. How on earth do you go about negotiating who's going to be working when? Because I assume it's going to be similar kind of like booking times. Is it like, okay, you get that this weekend, I'll get next weekend?
Yeah.
Are you having to like, or is it just whatever gets the first booking in first takes that weekend kind of thing?
Well, no, we're really lucky. So we've only got one daughter, so it's only her to organise, and we've got two. Both our parents are really heavily involved, so they do have her when we're both working. So it's less about picking days, choosing who can work one day, and more just looking at an overview of our work. So we don't want to end up with loads of weekends in a row where we've both been working really solidly and then feel like we haven't seen the little one at all. So we're kind of, as we're booking work in, I'm kind of looking at my diary, trying to spread it out. It is really difficult, isn't it? Because you kind of go, oh, well, I won't book one that weekend because I've got one for the 5 weekends before. And then like an awesome venue comes in on that wedding weekend, and it's really hard to say no. And I think like we don't tend to kind of book in a holiday week right at the beginning of the year. We'll sort of see how the bookings are happening. But at some point during the year, we'll go, okay, well, this week is looking pretty, there's nothing booked in yet, so let's now block that week out. And I think it's really hard not to feel guilty to do that, but you really do have to go, that is going to be a holiday, it's okay to take a holiday. Don't book anything in, and then that's always going to be the week that you get a million inquiries for. But you can't do all those inquiries, you could only do one or two of those weddings. And it will be the best ones, but if you don't block out that time, then you'll just be working constantly. So that's really important for us to sort of schedule out time.
And set boundaries and kind of like...
Yeah.
And have you ever had it in a where you have kind of accidentally booked too many for the year and the schedule is going to get a bit tight?
Yeah, I don't think... I've definitely been at like within my... got right up to the date that I've told people that I'm going to deliver their films by. It's really stressful, but I think that then it's always informed the following year for me. So I've been able to work out that just hasn't worked. I've changed my contracts to tell people that actually the editing time is going to take longer, because I think when I first did it, I was saying like within 6 weeks, which is just, I could never get it done within 6 weeks. Now I now say 3 months, but on my schedule I tried to do it within eight weeks. But they've been told 3 months, so if I do go over that 8 weeks, then it's fine. But in my head I'm still like, I want to get it by 8 weeks. So at some point during the year I then end up starting to make an editing schedule. So I've got like an Excel spreadsheet and I'll kind of plan my days out.
Right, okay.
So it's all very color coded, and I don't start it earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, I keep it quite casual because the workflow it hasn't kind of built up. So I just get as much done as when I can. But when it gets kind of July time and it's starting to build up, I'll almost plan out each day and what part of the films I'm going to do, and then put in when each film is due, so I can see how much work I need to get done within those timeframes.
So you're breaking it down day by day, so you know what you need to do each day to make, And
I've done it a few times where I've timed how long it takes to do a wedding, or each part of a wedding takes to do. So I do that occasionally at the beginning of the year to just see how long it's taking me on average. And that can kind of inform that editing schedule, so I know how long it's going to take. Because I think in our heads we think we know. We're like, oh yeah, it takes about a day to do this, but actually it doesn't. And then I tend to plan myself in kind of catch-up days. So it's not all planned exactly to a point. I'll have catch-up days. So if I then ended up having a day where I wasn't really up to it, and I ended up having a day, I've got those kind of catch-up days to fall back on. So I don't factor in that I'm going to work like every second of every day. I'm sort of working within school hours now because we're in that stage of life. So I'm kind of getting into the office between like kind of 9 till about 2:30ish. And I used to always work evenings as well, which I do have to, especially this time of the year when there's so much to do. But I am trying to do that less and just have a bit of downtime, because I actually think it then makes me more productive in the day if I haven't been up till midnight doing editing. So it does, in that kind of 9 till 2:30 time, I can kind of cull a wedding, like get all the B-roll down, and then another one is kind of speeches and ceremony. This sort of matches up to the time. And then there's like going through all the audio, setting it to music, and then grading is another day. So it's like, I think it works out about a week and a half worth of those days to do a whole wedding.
As in like five full day, like as in a week being 5 working days, or actually 7 days?
So it's 5 working days. So it's probably about 7 or 8 of those days, but they're quite short, from like 9 till 2:30 to do a wedding in that time.
When it comes to music selection, you say for your full films, you've got like a bank of songs for each part of the day. Have you got? Yeah. When it comes to your highlight film, how are you finding this? Is it your highlight films usually one track?
Yeah, it is usually, and that is literally just sitting down and listening to them.
Yeah.
I just can't work out a better system for it. I will, like we said earlier, like I will use the same one again if I really liked a particular track. And sometimes if I found something for the full film, I'll use not within the same couple, but if I've used a previous wedding that's in the full film, I'll use one of those songs for the highlights if I really particularly liked that one, because people aren't seeing the full film, so I can use those songs into the highlights, so that makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, I don't know. I need a way round finding music, because it takes the most time.
Hardest part of the job. I don't know if there is a better way. Like I do like keep a bank as I'm listening. I'll be listening to I'll be going through listening to songs, and sometimes I think I hear a song, go, oh, that's great, not right for this wedding, but it's good, and I'll add that to a project for later down the line. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's any easy way around it. We've just got to, just got to do it. It's where we earn our money.
Yeah. So are you listening to music while you're editing?
No.
Or is that just while you're looking for songs?
Just when I'm.
Yeah.
I know some people that like will listen to music, but in the car and stuff. So like.
I know. Any opportunity where I'm not listening to the sound of editing, I'm listening to podcasts and things, because I just need that to distract me, to get me through the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously there's a lot of parts where you can't do that. And also I like listening to ones that are not work related sometimes, because I do find that it's a lot of information. I love listening to obviously your podcast, but like a lot of I like listening to a lot of the wedding industry ones, but I think it can get a lot to listen to them all the time. And I don't like listening to them on the way to a wedding. I'll listen to them on the way back, but not on the way, because sometimes you hear ideas, but I don't want to get overwhelmed on the way to a wedding. And you already get that. I mean, I'm really confident at a wedding. I've done a lot, but I still on the way there feel a little bit nervous and apprehensive about the day. I don't really want to have lots of ideas bombarded at me from a podcast, so I'll just listen to something like a comedy podcast on the way, really, just to kind of
reset your brain for a little bit.
I think so.
Because I used to, I don't struggle as much now, but on the way I used to be massively anxious on the way to weddings. It's mainly on my kind of like photo days. I think when I moved over to video, I found it so much more chill, because a lot of the pressure wasn't on me. But how do you?
I don't think I could be a photographer for that reason. I'd
really
hate having to direct people. And making sure you get all those shots. I feel like we can be a bit like, if you don't get certain shots, then it's fine.
yeah, definitely. The accountability is a bit different for us, isn't it? In terms of what people, I think people don't know what they expect from us as well, for the most part. Yeah. Whereas with photo, they've got like a list of things they want, but for video, it's completely different.
People say that to me all the time. They're like, "Oh yeah, we trust you. Just do your thing." Okay, great.
There she is, hiding in the bushes again. On the bushes. But is there any kind of like steps that you take to kind of tackle kind of anxiety in general about filming? And because the job that we have, it's a lot of pressure, isn't it? There's a lot of pressure to create like a great film, but also the fact that we have to do a million roles in our businesses. roles that will perhaps have a whole different person employed to do for most companies, like marketing and kind of admin. So it can be quite stressful. Is there anything that you put in place to kind of navigate that?
I think with experience, but like you said, like it becomes easier, doesn't it? I think confidence in like your own work and knowing that you can do a good job. But I think also like I've said before, I am lucky that like my husband's in the same industry, but he doesn't completely understand being a videographer, and so I think it's really good to have a constant like open conversation with him. And also like my mum works for us, so she's in the office with me, and so I kind of said the other day, I was like, by the way, this is the point of the year where I'm going to be the most stressed, just be aware. I'm not going to want to talk to you, I'm going to have my headphones in all day, and just kind of so that they know that, so they can kind of, they don't just think you're in a bad mood all the time. They're aware that time of year is your busiest time of the year. And you can plot that out. That's why this editing schedule that I have is really useful. So I can see exactly what point where I'm going to be right up to the date where everything's due, and I am going to need like some extra help, and I'm going to need some extra time. So I'm constantly telling Jamie that this is where my editing is going to be really full on. But I think if they don't work in that industry, especially if you've got a partner who's got a full-time job, or like the sort of job where they come home and they don't have anything to do when they get home, they want to come home and relax, and you're kind of like, well, I've still got editing to do, I've got calls, I got a Zoom call at 8:00 tonight or something like that. It can be quite hard to understand. I know when I was a teacher, it was really difficult, the differences in jobs between me and Jamie, because he was at home all the time and going off to work at the weekend. So I think it's really important to explain the pressures of the job. And then try and pick up the slack at other times of the year. So, in January, where I haven't got as much to do, then I'm trying to do a lot more with like the childcare and things around the house, just stuff like that, because it can really take a toll. So I think it's really good to have those people on your side. And like my friends are all aware. Everyone always goes, "Oh, we'll see you in the new year then."
Yeah,
because we're not going to see you now. But I always try and find time to kind of see other friends, because although I love my like network of wedding supplier friends, and there's a real value to having them because we can obviously share similar experiences together, it is important to have time with people that are not working in the wedding industry, because it can take over our lives a little bit. It's nice to just have something a little bit different. And I don't really have any sort of regular hobby or anything, but I think if you've got a hobby, that would be brilliant to do, to kind of have, a shut off, because we can't really shut off, because people are sending inquiries in all the time. And the fact that we have it on our phone, that's the most annoying thing, isn't it? Like you can set office hours, but as soon as inquiry sort of pops up, you can't resist to have a look at what it is, and like you might reply to it straight away. And I've had an inquiry today where they inquired, I think yesterday, and they were already following up. And
oh, really?
Okay,
Chasing you?
I'm getting to you. But so it can feel like a constant pressure kind of all the time with that. So it's nice to have things that are in a separate part of your life that but you have to cut out time for, and not feel guilty for doing. Because it can then make you more productive when you then come back to it.
And I find it very interesting. I can the editing schedule that you're saying you've got, like I can see how many different ways that can work. So it's keeping you accountable for your time to maybe stop procrastination in the fact that you need to get certain things done at a certain time. It then helps with kind of with your husband, like he can and people that they can see that how your day looks and the amount of work you have to get done, because there's a lot of people, like especially my friends, think I only work at weekends and I'm chilling throughout the week. But I'm thinking, no, I'm actually through the week is when the majority of my work takes place. So having that schedule that you can show people, go, this is what I need to be doing at these set times, and then that will stop, like especially with family members, like because I'm at home, and you can get like random like favors and things thrown at you, can't you? Oh, you can help come and drop me off to get my car service.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah, but like having this kind of like, you say, no, I can't actually, because I've got this time blocked out. I need to be doing this, and this, and this, and then you can make space to do things like that, I guess. But but it's almost setting boundaries for yourself and for other people to kind of affect your time. But I guess you also know exactly then how much time and effort is going into every single film. So when it comes to pricing, you can see your value in it.
You can. And that can help, I think, with yourself for making those arguments, because when you're sort of sitting there and going, how much should I be charging? I'm asking people for a lot of money. It's a big decision for them. And then you can look back and say, well, actually, I'm doing all this work. So I am worth it. It is worth the money, because that can be really hard, especially if you have a bad day or a bit of a really difficult wedding. It can really make you question whether you're quite a lot of the time. I find it during the edit, it changes. I'll get home and I'll put it all down. I think this is awful. Like, what have I done? I've ruined, because you can see all the crap that you've done.
Yeah.
And then you start to put it together, and by the end I'm like, oh, well, I'm absolute genius. This is a masterpiece.
That emotional roller coaster you go on.
Yeah. And then I have to get anyone who's near me to watch it. I'm like, look at this, look what I've made.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be really hard. And then weddings are really difficult. Like, I've had some really wet, rubbish weddings this year, really hard to do. And that's so, some weddings are so perfect, the lighting's amazing and it's really easy and the speeches are brilliant. And then some, it's so hard to do. And yeah, that can really knock your confidence, I think.
Yeah. And it's like, I always find like this job as well is just a constant battle with like imposter syndrome, isn't it? And do you find that at all? Yeah,
definitely. I did. And I think that's, like I said, like listening too much to other people's ideas and seeing everybody's work on social media. And I think that Instagram will show me all the amazing stuff, because I obviously follow the people that do really great work, and they tend to have really amazing weddings. And I think we can make all weddings look pretty, but if you do a wedding on the Amalfi Coast, it is going to look better than like some of the weddings that we do in the UK. So it's hard to sort of see through the really epic weddings and see that actually it's a similar level of work. It's just they had a really amazing wedding. And I haven't really done, the only destination weddings that I've done have been people that I knew, like they've been kind of friends of family. And I'd love to do more. But then also on the other hand, if I get a wedding that's kind of more than a few hours away, I kind of think, oh, do I want to do that? And I think sometimes we can put pressure on ourselves to want to do all these amazing weddings, but it's okay to just do normal local weddings if that fits well for your lifestyle. You don't need to be doing, because really it's only a very small percentage of us are doing those really incredible weddings.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that I kind of like, I want to highlight to people, this race for the kind of high-end luxury market that all education seems to be pushing people towards. It's not healthy, because it's not attainable for a majority of us. And
yeah, we can't all do it. There's not enough of them.
No, it doesn't make sense. Like, and it's almost, I feel like I fell into that trap as well. I wanted to be doing like super high-end luxury weddings that led by planners and shoot 10 weddings a year for, £1 million. But there's not much of that work out there. And I'm in a situation where I'm the sole income for the family. I need to be creating a sustainable business for my family. But yeah, that race for that kind of market where you're only doing like 5 weddings a year, but you have one of them cancel, and that's a massive hit on your income. And I can't take that gamble in my situation. So it's a case of like maturing in my mindset. I'm not trying to chase that prize. It's a case of creating a business that's going to be creatively fulfilling, but also attainable and sustainable.
Yeah. And I think it's more pressure. I've never missed a wedding and had to get an associate, but I do have access to a lot of people that I could ask if that was a situation. I think if I was working one of those high-end weddings, it would feel like a much bigger deal. I mean, it still feels a massive deal. The thought of having to send somebody else instead of me, I'm a massive control freak. I'd absolutely hate it. And I'd feel so awful telling the couple, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. I think we sometimes put too much pressure on ourselves in that respect, that their wedding will still go ahead.
The fear of not being able to turn up to one of your own weddings is quite brutal, isn't it? And there can't be many other jobs where there is that kind of pressure. Like if you're a normal 9 to 5, if you're ill, you just don't go in, right? Like, but whereas we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we usually are the face behind the brand and the business in total. There's a lot of pressure on us to be there no matter what the circumstances, right?
And you put a lot of prep into it, don't you? And you've had those kind of pre-wedding calls, so you feel like you know the couple. So sending somebody else, they don't necessarily know that information, so you can be really reluctant to do it. So I think most of us still go, And also some things are kind of ongoing. So it's not necessarily that you've just woken up with a really bad sickness bug, but like mental health issues as well, and things that are happening, like big events that are happening in your life that might be. Weddings are really emotional, aren't they? So it's difficult because they bring up some of those emotions. There's a lot of family dynamics at weddings. So it can be really hard to deal with that when there's things going on in your personal life as well. I think if you go to kind of an office job, you can quite happily get on with your work sometimes without any of those subjects being brought up, but they can come up a lot at weddings.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I lost my dad during towards the end of wedding season, but then you find yourself kind of watching dads see their daughters on their wedding day and stuff, and that family dynamic, and you're thrown straight in it, and you find yourself like kind of emotionally behind, like crippled behind the camera. But I think I got myself through it. But I was born in the 80s. We're taught just to grin and bear it, but that's probably not the mentality to have, right? We've got to look after ourselves. Yeah,
definitely. And then it's hard to then do a good job. I'm sure we all do, but it can definitely, I'm sure it must affect our work, and maybe not always on the day, but it can then definitely affect your editing schedule, and how you're getting through your workflow, because the idea of battling because you're going to see those moments again in the edit. So if it was emotional at the time, you've got to then go back through them again, and then you might end up putting it off, and you've got more work to do, because it's not just the wedding day that we've got to show up for, it's the editing as well. And you can't, if you take any time off of that, I mean, you should take time off and you should carve yourself, and if there's anything going on that's worth sharing with the couple, they're all just real people as well. So like when you lost your dad, if you needed some space from that, you could have kind of contacted your couples and said, this is going on, you're going to need to expect a bit of a delay. We had 2 miscarriages this year, and we've had another one at another time, and so that's kind of like caused some physical things that I've needed to get over. And then when it's right in the middle of wedding season, I'm just constantly thinking, I need to get back to editing, but you also need time to kind of heal from those things again as well, whether they're physical things or emotional things. So I do think it is okay to express those to your couples and let them know, because it's much better to do that than to just get behind, and then you have people chasing you up and saying, where are the films? But you can, if you preempt it and say, I'm really sorry, but it's going to be a little bit longer. So you don't need to give them loads of details, but just say that, there's something going on. And I found during that time, I should have done it more really, but it was helpful to tell someone on the day. So it's easier when it's, like a photographer that you've been working with. Yeah. But I think even if it's not somebody, just telling them that something's going on with you, it just feels nice to know that there's somebody there who's aware of it. Yeah. So, but I think it's really hard, isn't it? Because you don't want to come in first impressions and say, oh, hi, but nice to meet you, but I'm having a really terrible day. But I think even just the actual process of telling somebody that you're having a bad day, that then may completely take the weight off your shoulders, and you don't need to discuss it anymore. Just to know that we're really lucky because we are always working with a photographer. And if you needed a moment to just take a breather, if there was something at the wedding that brought up, a lot of emotion, that you've told that photographer, and they can kind of just have you back for a minute. I'm not suggesting that you need to go like halfway through the ceremony, but sometimes there's a bit of an opportunity in the day where we can go and have a little bit of a moment if you need it. It would be handy to know that you've kind of got someone who can speak for you. Yeah. If, like, say the couple were looking for you or something. But yeah.
We have to remember that we aren't like Superman, Superwoman. Like we are human, and as much as we think that the whole world starts and ends with our wedding films, we're just a wedding supply at the end of the day, but we're a human, and we need to take care of ourselves, don't we?
Definitely.
Mentally, physically. And I think like you're saying, like we're talking to the photographer and stuff, that's why I just put so much value in having in wedding industry friends in general, because people that are going through the same life experiences as us and have the same expectations on themselves. sometimes like having those people to speak to out of the wedding as well, to kind of like they understand what we're going through and how much pressure we put on ourselves to turn up on a day no matter what's going on in our life, and then also we've got them to call upon if we need them to step in for us. But,
definitely.
I'm so sorry for what you guys have gone through, mate.
Well, thanks.
And the fact that you've then, did you almost feel the pressure to still you had to go to these weddings despite what was going on in your life?
I mean, I think what's good about weddings is that I love filming them. So for me, they're a great distraction.
Yeah,
the first miscarriage that we had, we found out a morning of a wedding, and I had sorted out an associate to go to that wedding, but I was like, I still need to go to it. And I don't know if it was the pressure or if it was just for me, it was just a really good distraction. But looking back on it, it was a terrible decision.
Really?
Because it was then really hard to edit that wedding, because I knew that all the emotion that I was going through there, and like the song that they used, like some of the songs at their weddings, they've kind of stuck with me and I kind of associated with what I was feeling on the day. And then I was nervous to go back to that venue again, because I was worried it was bringing it up. But actually, and this is a good point, I think, for the wedding industry in general, the staff at that venue were absolutely amazing. They didn't know what was going on. They were just really lovely and really looked after us. And that made a big difference to me on the day, because if it happened to be working at a venue where they're a little bit, they're not always the nicest, no. They don't always look after us, that might have made it more difficult. And so when I came back to that venue, they were really lovely again. And so now I have good memories of that venue, and I've been back plenty of times, and it's fine. It doesn't have those kind of triggers for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Like, we've all had conversations where we go, I've worked with this photographer and he, it was a nightmare on the day, but we don't know if they definitely are. Like, that could just be a really bad day for them. So I always tend to kind of really kill people with kindness all the time, because you don't know what's going on. It could be that they are just a bit of an off, but it can be just a bit of a bad day. And I think in general, the wedding industry is full of really lovely people. So if we can keep that up, because it is, even if you're not going through a bad time, weddings can be a real emotional roller coaster. I mean, I cry at speeches all the time. So it's nice to kind of just have each other's backs, and they can be really intense, and sometimes couples are quite hard work. So I think, if we can be as kind to each other as possible, that's really helpful.
And not put so much pressure on ourselves. Like, one thing that COVID has taught me is that on the weddings where there was 2 weddings where I had to send associates because I had COVID, and it was like big bad COVID back in the day when you couldn't leave the house. And I was almost disappointed with how chill the couples were about it. They're like, oh yeah, brilliant, that's fine, because they're like, or especially as a videographer, they're thinking, I say to them, it's still going to be edited by me. And I'm thinking, that's all that matters. It's the edit. It's all in the edit. So in a way, I guess it is. But that taught me that I need to stop being so precious. And like, if there is something going on where, no, I'm really struggling, just remember that people are, if you communicate properly and put people in place that'll help them out, then they'll be fine with it. So
yeah, I think when we did get pregnant, it was really, that's the sort of stress of, I'm going to have to cancel some weddings. My daughter was born in August of 2020, so it actually worked out fine. But when we found out, and I was going through the process of talking to couples, I didn't know COVID was going to happen. I kind of tried to rearrange things around February time.
Yeah. And
it was like March, wasn't it, when it all got cancelled. But yeah, most people were like, oh, it's fine. Yeah. Because I'd organised loads of, I checked who was free, and because I wasn't sending out associates, I was just passing the booking over completely. I found loads of people that were free and similar price, similar style. And most people just went, it's fine. Yeah,
damn it, no, put up a bit of fight.
Oh, all right, okay. Yeah, come on.
Right, mate. So I've kept you for a very long time, but I've really enjoyed our chat, mate. I've loved it. So one final question for you, Becky. And it's the question that I like to ask everyone and end the podcast with. What were the biggest light bulb moments in your career so far, when something suddenly made sense and helped you progress or find a path that you wanted to take?
Well, I think I've mentioned it, but I think when I moved over to primes and going handheld was a really big moment for me, because it meant I could be just so much more flexible, and kind of be more like a guest at the wedding. So kind of be more involved in within it and get a little bit in with the action, and kind of get that kind of guest eye view of things, rather than having to feel like I was kind of chained to my equipment and my monopod.
And when like shooting primes, do you find, me personally, so if ever I try to zoom, I find myself, I get complete decision blindness because there's so many options. Whereas if I've got my prime, I either need to get in closer or shoot where I am, and it takes away that kind of decision element for me. It means I can be a bit more creative. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, definitely. Because I was stood with the zoom on a monopod, and I could basically stay in the same spot for ages and just kind of pivot and zoom in and out. Whereas, with the prime, you do have to move around a lot more, and that kind of forces you to be a bit more creative and look for different angles and things. And
then you start seeing the world in that focal length, don't you, that you become accustomed
to.
Yeah. Apart from one of your Panasonics where it randomly crops when you try to go 50p.
Well, yeah, but I'm on that all the time, so it's fine.
True. Just getting
the mindset.
Just getting a sly little dig in for Panasonic for no reason at the end. But thanks, Becky. Thank you so much for this chat.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward
really
to
fun.
catching up with you in person in Coda, right? You're going to be there, aren't you?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. See you soon.
All right, thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Coda Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and wouldn't mind helping us out, please consider leaving a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. We have many more conversations with inspiring filmmakers still to come, so make sure to subscribe to be notified when the next episode goes live.